There comes a moment in every seeker's life when the fabric of the ordinary splits just enough for light to leak through, and once you glimpse it, you cannot return to the comfort of ignorance. This is what the title promises, that you will hear something so resonant, so irreversibly true, that every assumption about reality, every quiet belief you carried as unexamined furniture in the rooms of your mind will shift. It will be like standing on a familiar shore and realizing the waves you thought were random have been pulsing in a pattern all along, a hidden rhythm guiding them in and out. Creation, in its bones, is intelligible order. It is not blind chaos, not indifferent dust colliding, but signal-structured, pulsing, alive, responsive. To hear this for the first time is like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog, not with noise, but with clarity. The fog doesn't vanish, but suddenly, you know there is direction. Suddenly, you know you are not abandoned. Think of it as tuning a radio after years of static. For so long you accepted the hiss as normal, assumed the world was fractured and incoherent. Then, almost by accident, your hand turns the dial one more degree, and suddenly the static condenses into a voice clear, coherent, carrying meaning you didn't even know you were starving for. That is what this revelation feels like. An inner alignment, a signal emerging from behind the veil of noise, a pattern revealing itself in what once seemed meaningless. And just as you cannot unhear a melody once it has entered your body, you cannot unknow this truth once it has entered your awareness. The universe is not random, it is relational, responsive, a dialogue in which your every thought, emotion, and breath participates. To prepare yourself for this journey, place your hand upon your heart for a moment. Feel the steady rhythm there. Not random, not accidental, but ordered. Inhale gently for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 6. As you exhale, whisper inwardly or aloud, I choose clear signal. Let this mantra settle into you like a pebble into still water, rippling outward. The practice is simple, but it marks the threshold. The moment you declare yourself willing to hear differently, to live differently, to participate consciously in the signal instead of being lost in the static. And from this doorway, we step forward not as wanderers in fog, but as navigators by signal, from noise to signal, from chaos to pattern, from blindness to recognition. The door you cannot unhear has opened, and beyond it lies an archive of truth waiting to be remembered. There was once a clockmaker who prided himself on his skill, and in the little village where he lived, every home carried one of his timepieces upon its mantle or its wall. His shop smelled of oil and brass, and the air was always alive with the faint tick of countless pendulums swinging in agreement. Yet as the years passed, he began to notice that no matter how carefully he cut the gears, no matter how finely he polished the cogs, some clocks fell out of rhythm. They lagged behind or ran ahead, and in his pride he declared that he would master time itself. He tightened springs too far, forced pendulums into a stricter arc, wound screws until the wood creaked under his hand, and for a moment he thought he had succeeded. The clocks ticked loudly, sharply, each second hammered into place like a nail. But then one by one they broke, their gears stripped, their springs snapped, their pendulums stilled. The villagers returned with their silent clocks, and the clockmaker, red with shame, hid among his tools and wondered if time itself was mocking him. It was an old woman, a midwife who had sat beside hundreds of births, who brought him the lesson. She handed him her broken clock, not in anger but in kindness, and said, You cannot force rhythm, my friend. You can only align with it. Babies do not arrive because we demand it. They arrive when they are ready. The heart does not beat because we command it. It beats because it knows. Time is not your servant, it is your partner. Her words struck the clockmaker like a chime in an empty church. He returned to his bench, but this time he worked differently. He cleaned the gears gently, oiled the pivots so they would slide with ease, reset the pendulum to its natural swing. He stopped demanding and began listening. And soon the clocks returned to life, ticking softly, each in harmony with the rhythm of the world outside his window, the rising and setting of the sun, the seasons of the fields, the pulse of human hearts that wandered into his shop. He never forced another clock again, because he understood at last, alignment will carry what force cannot. This parable is a mirror for our own striving. How many times have you tightened the springs of your life, pushing harder, working longer, demanding results before their ripeness? How often have you cracked under the pressure of your own urgency, convinced that if you just applied more force, more effort, more control, you would master the flow of reality. And yet, as with the clocks, forcing always leads to breakage. The law embedded in design is not one of compulsion but of congruence. Reality does not obey threats or begging. It responds to alignment. When your inner rhythm synchronizes with the deeper pulse of creation, things begin to move with ease not because you pushed, but because you stopped pushing against. So let the question arise within you. Where in your life are you forcing? Where are you winding the spring too tight, demanding that time, love, money, or opportunity arrive on your schedule? Take a moment to name one such place. And then imagine yourself like the clockmaker, setting down the screwdriver, pausing before the pendulum, breathing with it until its natural rhythm emerges again. This is not surrender in the sense of defeat. It is surrender as wisdom. It is trust that there is a lawfulness already in motion, and your role is not to command it, but to cooperate with it. Mechanics teach metaphysics. The gear turns not because you strain against it, but because you respect its design. And so with your life, stop forcing, start aligning, and you will find that time itself becomes your partner rather than your adversary. If the clockmaker's lesson shows us the futility of forcing, then the next step is to ask, what is it we are aligning with? To speak of alignment presumes a deeper medium, a field within which our lives unfold, a current that can be felt even when it cannot be seen. This is the ontology of signal, the recognition that reality, at its most foundational level, is vibration. Every star burning, every leaf trembling, every atom whirling in its invisible orbit, every thought that flashes across your inner sky, all of it is movement, oscillation, rhythm. We call matter solid, but the truth is it is humming, alive with constant motion. If you had ears fine enough, you would hear the song of every table, every wall, every body around you, not metaphorically but literally, a low chorus of frequencies resonating together, some harmonious, some discordant, yet all contributing to the great symphony of existence. Consider the breath. It enters and leaves like the tide on a shore, always in rhythm, always in cycle. Breath is not only oxygen exchange, it is participation in the field, a physical reminder that you are both transmitter and receiver. Each inhale draws you into alignment with the greater pulse. Each exhale broadcasts your signal outward, invisible yet impactful. In ancient traditions, breath was always sacred because it revealed this truth. You are never separate from the signal. You are woven into it every moment. Even your emotions ride on this breath, carried like notes on a current of air. When joy rises, your frequency brightens, expands. When fear tightens, your signal contracts, lowers. To ignore this is to believe you are only flesh, only machinery. To recognize it is to reclaim your role as a resonant being. Think of a tuning fork. Strike it and it hums at a precise frequency. And if another fork of the same pitch is nearby, it will begin to vibrate as well, even without being touched. This is resonance, and it is happening constantly in your life. Your thoughts vibrate, your emotions amplify, and the universe, this living field of signal, responds by vibrating back, aligning circumstances, people, and opportunities with the frequency you emit. When you are heavy with doubt, you call to you situations that echo doubt. When you are calm with trust, you draw on experiences that match calmness. The field is impartial. It is not punishing or rewarding. It is responsive, like a mirror. It reflects not your words but your vibration, not your wishes but your frequency. So let us make this practical. Pause now and ask yourself, what is my dominant frequency today? Not the words I say when someone asks me how I am, but the actual tone humming beneath my skin. Is it anxious, sharp, erratic like static? Is it heavy, slow, thick like mud? Is it bright, buoyant, clear like a bell? Label it honestly, without judgment. This is not about shame, it is about awareness. For you cannot shift a signal you refuse to admit. Awareness is the first tuning, the first strike of the fork. From there, you can choose. Because once you accept that everything is signal, you also accept that signal can be tuned. And this is the heart of the ontology. Existence is not inert stuff colliding in darkness, but living vibration that you participate in with every breath, every thought, every emotion. Once you know this, nothing about reality is the same again. You stop asking, why is life happening to me? And begin to ask, what am I broadcasting and how is life echoing it back? This is the shift from victimhood to stewardship, from chaos to coherence. Once you accept signal, you can shape it. And to shape it, you must learn the craft of discernment. Now that you have seen reality as vibration and yourself as both transmitter and receiver, the next essential skill is discernment, the ability to tell the difference between static and signal. Because not every noise that enters your mind or heart carries truth. Not every urgency is guidance. Not every impulse is wisdom. Imagine standing on the roof of a house during a storm. The rain hammers, the wind howls, branches scrape, and in the distance, a siren wails. The chaos is overwhelming, yet beneath it all there is also a steady hum, the resonance of the house itself, the quiet stability of the beams and foundations holding you upright. Static is the storm, signal is the hum. Static distracts, agitates, confuses. Signal steadies, clarifies, directs. Learning to differentiate them is one of the most sacred arts of living, because without it you may spend your days chasing sirens when the compass has been quietly waiting in your palm. Static often disguises itself as urgency. It shouts, "Act now or lose everything." It floods you with adrenaline, narrows your vision, and leaves you exhausted. But urgency is rarely truth. Signal does not need to shout. It is patient, calm, insistent in its clarity but never frantic. Think of a foghorn in the distance, low and steady, guiding ships through mist. That is signal. Now think of a car alarm shrieking in the middle of the night, repetitive, anxious, demanding. That is static. Both are sound, both enter your ear, but one carries guidance and the other carries agitation. How often in your life have you mistaken the car alarm for a divine message, running in circles to appease its demand, only to realize later that nothing essential was at stake? Theologically, wisdom has always been described as gentle. Ancient texts speak of the still, small voice, rather than the thunderclap. Guidance does not bully, it invites. Static bullies. It grabs your mind and says, "If you don't move right now, disaster will come." Signal says, "Pause. Listen. This way." The difference is profound but subtle, and it requires practice to hear. The key is to notice the state each produces in your body. Static tightens your chest, accelerates your breath, makes your thoughts race. Signal deepens your breath, loosens your shoulders, slows your mind into clarity. Your body is the first and most honest instrument of discernment. So let us practice. Take 3 breaths now. On each inhale, ask yourself, what voices are loudest in me right now? On each exhale, ask, are they urgent or true? Feel the difference. Urgency may flood you with the need to act instantly, but truth does not collapse under waiting. If something is truly aligned, it will still be aligned tomorrow, next week, next year. Signal has patience because it rests in eternal law. Static has panic because it knows it is temporary. This simple question, urgent or true, is the tuning fork of discernment. Use it often. And here lies the promise. Once you learn to lower the volume of static, even slightly, the true signal becomes audible. It has always been there, like the hum beneath the storm, but drowned out by noise. When you begin to listen for it, your entire posture toward life changes. You stop running after every alarm and begin walking steadily toward clarity. You stop exhausting yourself with reaction and begin conserving your energy for response. You begin to trust that reality is not chaos, but conversation. And in that trust, the blueprint of intention begins to emerge. Imagine now that discernment has lowered the storm, the static has softened, and before you appears not a battlefield of noise but a doorway arched, carved with symbols you do not yet recognize, but somehow already remember. You step through, and you are no longer in the clamor of the world but inside a hall of memory, the kind of place where the air itself seems to glow with quiet wisdom. This is the archive. Not a library of facts to impress or a museum of relics to admire, but a living sanctuary of remembrance, where what you discover is not brand new knowledge but the return of something you once carried in your bones before forgetting. The shelves rise higher than sight, yet the space does not overwhelm it comforts, as though the books lean slightly forward to greet you, as though every scroll and codex has been waiting patiently for your arrival. Theological traditions have always spoken of memory as sacred, of knowledge not as invention but as recollection. And in this archive you feel the truth of that. You run your fingers along the spines, and instead of titles, you find impressions, feelings, half-formed images, fragments of dreams you once dismissed. A lamplight pools warmly on the reading table, casting shadows not of menace but of invitation. Keys lie scattered across the wood, some iron, heavy with age, others bone, white, fragile but precise, others crystalline, catching the light and scattering it into prisms. They are not meant for locks in doors of wood and stone, but for locks within your own perception. To pick one up is to admit readiness. To speak aloud the vow, I am ready to remember, is to turn the key. And when you do, the archive does not thunder or erupt, it exhales, softly, as if a page you had forgotten to write is now being filled in. Notice how your shoulders drop as you picture yourself here, how your breath lengthens without your command. That is the body recognizing signal, recognizing sanctuary. In ordinary life, we are starved by novelty, by the endless churn of content demanding attention, but here novelty is nothing. Remembrance is everything. You do not need the newest trick, the latest technique. You need to remember who you already are, what frequency you already carry, what lawfulness has always been shaping your path. This is why you are here in the lost archive, not to collect shiny fragments, but to uncover what has always been inscribed within you. So write it now, if you can, on paper or in the chambers of your mind. I am ready to remember. Do not whisper it as a wish, but declare it as a choice. This is the act of entering the stacks, of aligning yourself with the current of wisdom that does not run out, because it is not learned, it is recalled. And from this hall, from this vow, the path of intention opens. For to remember is to intend, and to intend is to give shape to remembrance. The archive waits, but it does not hold you. It accompanies you as you step out into the drafting room of creation, blueprint in hand, light still warm in your chest. Pause here, before we rush onward, and gather the golden threads we have already laid across the loom, because without weaving them together you may forget the strength that has already been placed in your hands. You have heard the first door open, the one you cannot unhear, the recognition that reality is not chaos but signal, structured and responsive. You have walked with the clockmaker who discovered that forcing only fractures what alignment would have carried with ease. You have learned that the substance of existence itself is vibration, humming beneath appearances like a tuning fork struck by eternity. You have practiced discernment, separating static from signal, urgency from truth. And you have stepped into the archive, lamplight spilling across vellum and keys, whispering the vow that reshapes all remembrance. I am ready to remember. These are not fragments. They are one unfolding lesson, each chapter the breath of the same song. It is important now to acknowledge the ground we stand on, because without gratitude we treat revelation as mere novelty, another shiny idea to toss on the pile of distractions. Gratitude seals, like wax pressed with a signet ring, the insights we have received so that they do not evaporate in the winds of forgetfulness. So breathe deeply and whisper thanks, not only for what has been spoken here, but for the small shifts already felt in your own body, the subtle loosening of your chest, the deepening of your breath, the flicker of recognition that perhaps you have always known more than you allowed yourself to admit. Gratitude is the hinge by which the door of remembrance swings open wider, and in expressing it, you give yourself permission to continue. From here, the promise is simple but immense. We will move into the crafting of intention, the drafting of the blueprint by which your vibration takes form in the world. We will learn how to articulate desires not as vague longings, but as architectural plans infused with clarity, rooted in integrity, aligned with the highest good. Just as a compass warms when held in the palm, preparing to point true north, so too your heart is being ready to declare direction. You will not be left in the archive forever. Gazing at shelves of memory, you will step forward as a builder, a weaver, a conscious participant in the design of your own reality. Whisper thanks one more time for a single truth that has touched you so far, however small, however quiet. That whisper is your seal, your map unfolding, your compass glowing with readiness. And with that seal pressed, we can turn to the drafting table of creation itself. The next step is intention, to take remembrance and give it structure, to draw the lines of the life you are ready to live. In a quiet village nestled between mountains that caught the first light of dawn and valleys where rivers wove their silver braids, there lived a weaver named Elenya. Her loom was her companion, and her days were filled with the rhythmic clatter of shuttle against thread. Yet though her skill was great, she often felt as though something was missing from her craft. The cloths she produced were beautiful, admired by travelers and villagers alike, but to her they seemed mute, silent tapestries without pulse. as though they carried no life of their own. Night after night, she would sit before the half-finished work, staring at the warp and weft, wishing to see something she could not yet name. One evening, overcome by fatigue, she drifted into a dream. In that dream, she entered a vast hall, much like the archive we have already stepped into, but here the walls were covered entirely in luminous fabric, woven with patterns that shifted as though alive. She reached out to touch a tapestry, and in that instant she was no longer looking at a finished cloth but at the threads themselves, suspended in shimmering potential. She saw the pattern before it was woven, as though the design already existed in some invisible field, waiting only for her hands to bring it into form. When she awoke, the dream clung to her fingers like starlight. She sat at her loom again, and this time, she did not force the threads or invent designs. She closed her eyes, breathed, and allowed her heart to remember the pattern. Slowly, with quiet awe, her shuttle carried the thread through, and when she opened her eyes, she saw it. The cloth was alive, singing with a beauty she had never been able to create before. She had not invented it, she had revealed it. This is the parable of intention. For intention is not the arrogant act of commanding the universe to obey our personal fantasies. It is the sacred art of listening for the pattern already vibrating in the field and then choosing to bring it forward with clarity. Just as the weaver does not create the thread but aligns it into form, so too you do not fabricate reality from nothing. You participate in a living design, you cooperate with the signal. Intention is the loom that catches the unseen and renders it visible, the shuttle that carries desire across the warp of time until it becomes fabric in your hands. Without intention, your energy is scattered like loose threads on the floor, bright, perhaps, but without cohesion. With intention, those same threads become tapestry, alive with coherence and resonance. So pause now and allow yourself to name one pattern you long to see revealed in your life. Not in abstract words that vanish into the air, happiness, success, love, but in images and feelings as tangible as the woven cloth. What does the pattern of love look like in your daily life? Is it the morning light falling across a shared table? The laughter that comes without effort? What does the pattern of abundance feel like in your chest? Is it the quiet security of knowing your needs are met? The freedom to give generously without fear? What does the pattern of peace sound like in your ears? Perhaps the absence of anxiety, static, replaced by the steady rhythm of breath. Name one pattern now. Hold it gently. This is your thread. Remember Alenya, the weaver who discovered that patterns pre-exist in the field, waiting to be revealed. You too are not inventing from emptiness, you are remembering what is already humming in the invisible fabric of reality. This recognition frees you from the desperation of forcing, for you no longer believe yourself to be pulling something out of nothing. You are aligning with what already is, and in that alignment, your life begins to weave itself into coherence. From pattern, we move next to plan, from remembrance to blueprint, where intention takes shape as the architecture of creation. Grateful, I am safe, I am joyful, I am free. Say these 3 lines aloud, not as incantation but as blueprint, and notice how your body reacts. Your body will tell you if you are aligned, because alignment feels like coherence, breath deepening, chest opening, shoulders lowering. Misalignment feels like static tightness, strain, hesitation. The body is your drafting compass, showing you when your blueprint rings true and when it needs recalibration. This is the sacred anatomy of intention. Specificity as measurement, present tense as grounding, emotion as current. With these 3 bones in place, your desire has form, weight, and resonance. It is no longer scattered longing but focused architecture. It is no longer hope flung into the void but a coherent signal sent into the field. And with that signal clear, the universe begins to respond, not by miracle but by law. And so we step forward from anatomy into ethics, because every plan must be rooted in integrity, lest it crumble under its own contradictions. Even as we learn the anatomy of clear intention, there is a danger in believing that the mere act of writing words in a notebook or whispering affirmations aloud guarantees coherence. Many stumble here, not because the universe is unresponsive, but because the intentions they set are either vague, split, or borrowed 3 subtle but powerful ways of scattering the signal. Vague intentions are like smudged blueprints. You may have the sense of a cathedral rising in your imagination, but if the lines on the page are blurred, the builders cannot know where to place the stones. To say I want happiness is like telling a mason to build something nice. What is happiness to you? Is it mornings of quiet? Is it freedom from financial fear? Is it companionship that feels like home? Unless you clarify, you leave the universe responding to fog. And fog, no matter how thick, can never be built upon. Split intentions are another trap, more insidious because they masquerade as productivity. You say you want peace, but in the same breath you chase stimulation. You say you want love, but you guard yourself with suspicion. You say you want freedom, but you grip safety until your knuckles whiten. It is as if two architects are fighting over the same blueprint, one drawing windows where the other draws walls, one demanding towers where the other insists on gardens. The result is not coherence but contradiction, and contradiction yields nothing but delay. The universe does not punish split intention, it simply reflects it back as confusion, half-built bridges leading nowhere. If your energy is divided, the signal is fractured, and fractured signals cannot resonate. Then there are borrowed intentions, perhaps the most subtle pitfall of all. These are desires we carry not because they rise authentically from our soul, but because they have been whispered into us by parents, culture, peers, or the relentless churn of comparison. You may find yourself striving to own a house of a certain size, to achieve a title of a certain prestige, to manifest a lifestyle that glitters in the eyes of others, but when you pause to ask your body, there is no resonance, no warmth, no true alignment. Borrowed intentions are like clothes that do not fit. You can wear them, but you move awkwardly, constrained, never quite at ease. And the universe, sensitive as a mirror, reflects that awkwardness back. Opportunities that do not satisfy, achievements that feel hollow, victories that taste of ash instead of fulfillment. So, here is the practice. Pause and scan your desires with honesty. Write them out, each one, and then beside each ask, is this clear or vague? Is this united or split? Is this mine or borrowed? Do not be afraid of what you discover, for truth does not punish, it liberates. If you find vagueness, sharpen it into specificity. If you find division, choose which signal you will broadcast and release the other. If you find borrowing, return what is not yours with gratitude and reclaim what is. Integrity matters more than quantity. One clear, authentic, aligned intention will resonate more powerfully than a dozen scattered or borrowed ones. Remember, the universe does not respond to what you pretend to want. It responds to what you truly vibrate. To carry borrowed or split intentions is like playing a harp with half the strings out of tune. No matter how skilled the player, the song will falter. But when every string is tuned, even the simplest melody rings with beauty. Do not fear letting go of what is not yours, for in doing so, you make space for what is. The smudged blueprints can be burned, the dueling architects dismissed, the ill-fitting clothes returned. What remains will be truer, stronger, more resonant. And from that resonance, belief itself can rise to power the plan. There is a moment when theory must become embodiment, when clarity of thought must be sealed into clarity of practice. Otherwise, even the most beautiful blueprint risks floating away as unanchored ink. Ritual is the bridge between idea and embodiment, and among the simplest yet most potent is the ritual of fire and word, the candle and the sentence. Fire has always been more than light, it is consecration, the visible reminder that transformation is happening before your eyes. A wick, once lit, is never the same wick again. Wax, once melted, will never return to its original form. Fire insists on change, yet it also illuminates, sanctifies, and warms. When paired with a single clear sentence of intention, fire becomes not just a physical phenomenon but a carrier, a messenger, a beacon that broadcasts your chosen signal into the field. Picture yourself sitting before a small flame, its glow flickering against the shadows of the room. This is not decoration, it is a threshold. You breathe slowly, settling yourself, not rushing, not demanding, but arriving. In your hand is your sentence, written in the present tense, charged with specificity, infused with the emotional alignment you have cultivated. You do not write an essay of desire, nor do you scatter 1,000 words into the air. You craft a single, resonant line, sharp as a chisel, clear as a bell. I am living in a body that feels whole and strong, and every breath is gratitude for its vitality. Or, I am receiving financial abundance through my creativity, which flows with joy and blesses others. Or, I am surrounded by love that nourishes me, and I give love as freely as I receive it. The sentence is not long, but it carries weight like a seed dense with potential. Now, with the candle lit, you speak the sentence aloud not with desperation, but with reverence, as though you are placing the seed into fertile soil. Speak it once, clearly, as though engraving it into the air. Then pause. Allow the flame to catch your words, to hold them, to release them into the unseen. The candle becomes witness. It's burning, the visible reminder that something has been set in motion, that your signal has been released. You need not repeat it endlessly. Trust that once carried, it is heard. The ritual is not about convincing the universe, it is about convincing yourself, shifting your own body and mind into alignment with what you have declared. Notice how the flame dances when you exhale near it, how it responds even to the smallest breath. This is the same responsiveness the universe has to your intention. You may not see it immediately, but motion has already begun. And when you extinguish the candle, do not think of it as ending, but as sealing. The smoke that rises is the message carried upward, the exhale of fire into air, the merging of your intention with the wider field. You walk away not as someone who hoped, but as someone who declared. This ritual may seem simple, even too simple for the magnitude of your desires, but simplicity is its power. One candle, one sentence, one breath. That is all the field requires, for clarity does not shout, it resonates. Practice it as often as needed, not as obsession, but as devotion, not as repetition born of doubt, but as reaffirmation born of trust. In this way, you train yourself to remember, I do not beg, I do not force, I align. And from alignment, intention becomes signal, and from signal, reality begins to shift. With candle and sentence, your plan is not only drafted, but consecrated. Yet intention without integrity can still falter, which is why we now turn to ethics, the sacred boundaries that ensure your blueprint does not collapse under the weight of misalignment. Every blueprint, no matter how precise, must be built upon a foundation strong enough to bear the weight of what is constructed upon it, and in the realm of manifestation that foundation is ethics. Without it, even the clearest, most beautifully phrased intention becomes unstable. A house raised on sand that cracks beneath the first storm. The ethics of intention are not rules imposed by an external authority, nor are they a cage meant to stifle desire. They are the natural boundaries that keep your signal in harmony with the wider field, the garden fence that protects the blossoms from being trampled. Just as a gardener does not plant invasive weeds that will choke the soil, so too must you ensure that the desires you set into motion do not bring harm, exploitation, or violation of another's freedom. Reality, after all, is not yours alone, it is shared, and every vibration you emit enters the collective field. Think of it like a river. If your desire flows freely, aligned with the natural curves of the land, it nourishes everything it touches. Villages thrive on its banks, fields drink from its channels, and life multiplies in its waters. But if you attempt to force that river into unnatural paths for greed or control, you risk flood, drought, or stagnation, not because the river is punishing you, but because you ignored the laws of its nature. The same is true of intention. When set with disregard for harmony, it warps not only the lives of others but your own, reflecting back as turbulence, resistance, or hollow achievement. The law of vibration is impartial. It cannot bless a signal of harm with the fruits of peace. Therefore, as you craft your intentions, anchor them with this simple clause, in ways aligned with the highest good. This is not an escape clause that weakens your desire. It is the very reinforcement that strengthens it. It says to the universe, I trust the intelligence of the field to deliver what I have asked for, but only if it serves not only me but also the greater fabric of life. It prevents you from manifesting at the expense of another, from summoning something that satisfies the ego while starving the soul. It ensures that what arrives carries integrity, resonance, and sustainability. And paradoxically, it often allows the field to deliver outcomes even greater than you imagined. Because you have not constrained the how with selfishness, you have opened the door to wisdom larger than your own. This is where humility and agency meet. You have the right to declare your intention with clarity and power, but you also have the responsibility to align it with the wider good. Humility does not mean silence or passivity. It means recognition that you are a thread in a larger tapestry, and that your thread must weave in harmony with others. To say align with the highest good is to weave consciously, to trust that your joy need not rob another of theirs, that your abundance need not steal, that your love need not imprison. So as you revisit the sentence you spoke beside the candle, add this seal, whisper it aloud in ways aligned with the highest good. Feel how it shifts the weight of your desire from fear of selfishness into trust in harmony. Your heart loosens because you no longer fear doing harm unconsciously. Your body steadies because you know that what you are calling forth has been placed under the guardianship of wisdom. Ethics is not limitation, it is liberation. The assurance that what you receive will bless you and, by extension, bless the whole. Now the blueprint is drafted, consecrated, and sealed with integrity. The next step is to stabilize it, to ensure it does not remain ink on a page but becomes a signal strong enough to resonate across the field. And that stabilization comes not from more words, but from belief. Belief is the transmitter that powers the plan, sending the signal into reality with strength, consistency, and reach. We have traveled far already, and before we step into the territory of belief, the transmitter that powers every signal, it is vital to pause and gather what has been planted. Think of this as pressing a wax seal upon a letter, ensuring that what has been written remains intact as it journeys forward. Without these moments of gathering, knowledge slips through us like water through open hands. But when we seal it with gratitude, it hardens into something we can carry, something that endures. So recall, we began by hearing the truth that reality is not random but signal, alive and responsive. We sat with the clockmaker who discovered the futility of forcing in the grace of alignment. We learned that everything is vibration, that our bodies and breath are transmitters and receivers in a living field. We practiced discernment, distinguishing the shrill urgency of static from the calm resonance of signal. We stepped into the archive, that sanctuary of remembrance, and declared, "I am ready to remember." We wove the parable of Alenia, the weaver, who revealed that patterns already exist in the field, waiting for our choice to bring them forth. We studied the anatomy of intention specificity, present tense, emotional alignment, and unmasked the pitfalls of vague, split, or borrowed desires. We lit the candle, spoke the sentence, and consecrated our blueprint in flame. Finally, we sealed it with ethics, binding our desire to the highest good so that it may stand firm, unshaken by ego or harm. This is no small journey. Each step has been a thread, and now the threads must be tied into coherence. Gratitude is the knot. Gratitude takes scattered learning and weaves it into memory. So breathe deeply, and with your exhale whisper thanks not only for the teachings themselves, but for the ways they have already shifted your inner field. Perhaps your body feels looser, your mind clearer, your heart steadier. Acknowledge even the smallest shift, for gratitude magnifies what it touches. To thank is to say, "I have received," and to say "I have received" is to prepare yourself to receive more. Let the gratitude be the bridge that carries us into what comes next. For intention, no matter how clear, is powerless without belief. A blueprint is only paper until it is infused with power, and belief is that power. Belief is the transmitter that stabilizes the signal, strengthens the frequency, and carries it across the field so that reality itself bends to respond. So with thanks whispered and seal pressed, we now turn to belief, the unseen engine that animates every blueprint into life. On a jagged coastline where storms were frequent and the sea was known for swallowing ships without warning, there stood a lighthouse whose beam had once been the salvation of countless sailors. Its great lamp, polished and tended with devotion, pierced through fog and rain alike, guiding vessels to safe harbor when all else seemed lost. But over the years, neglect crept in. The keeper, weary and distracted, stopped polishing the lens, stopped refilling the oil, stopped checking the gears that turned the light. Slowly, dust dulled the glass, rust stiffened the machinery, and the great lamp that once blazed like a star became little more than a dim flicker. Out at sea, sailors strained their eyes toward the cliffs and saw only shadow. Many ships ran aground, splintered on the rocks, while the lighthouse, though still standing tall, had forgotten the one reason it was built: to shine. This parable is the mirror of belief, for belief is the light you shine into the field. It is not decoration, not an optional ornament, it is the very transmitter that ensures your signal is visible, coherent, strong enough to travel across the waters of reality. You may set the most beautiful intentions, drafting blueprints as detailed as a cathedral's schematics, but if your belief is dim, covered with the dust of doubt or the rust of unworthiness, the signal cannot carry. Ships will drift past you, opportunities will miss your harbor, not because the sea is cruel, but because your light has not been tended. And yet, like the lighthouse, the structure of your belief is never lost. It only waits for you to remember your role as keeper, to clean, to polish, to refuel. How many times in your life have you forgotten your own light? How many times have you spoken words of desire but whispered beneath them, "I don't deserve this. It probably won't happen. Maybe I am too late. Maybe I am not enough." These are the dust and rust of belief. They dim the beam, they shorten the reach, they cause your own signal to collapse before it reaches the horizon. The universe is not ignoring you, it is waiting for the transmitter to be restored. For a dim light cannot guide ships, and a fractured belief cannot stabilize intention. And yet, here is the grace. To tend your light is not a punishment, it is a calling. The act of polishing the glass of your belief is itself an act of remembrance. Each time you catch a doubt and bless it goodbye, each time you replace the whisper of not enough with the steadier hum of I am worthy, you are turning the gears, feeding the flame, brightening the lamp. Slowly, the beam grows strong again, visible across miles, cutting through storm and fog alike. And when the ships see it, when reality sees it, it responds, not with resistance, but with convergence, aligning itself to the signal you broadcast. So pause now and name one inherited doubt that has dimmed your light. Do not judge it. Do not scold yourself for carrying it. Simply notice it, acknowledge it, and then imagine yourself wiping it gently from the lens, as though polishing away years of neglect. Whisper to it, I release you. You are not mine to keep. Feel how, even in this simple act, the light within you grows a little clearer. This is the practice of tending the lighthouse. Small, steady, daily gestures of belief that restore the brilliance of your beam. And with each gesture, the transmitter of your life grows stronger, preparing to stabilize the blueprint you have already crafted. Belief is not an accessory, it is the very lamp itself. Without it, the blueprint remains invisible in the fog. With it, the path home is illuminated. So let us step now into the work of calibration, where belief is not only remembered but sharpened, tuned, and aligned, so that your signal may shine without distortion. Belief is not only the transmitter of your signal, it is the lens through which you see the entire world, the invisible filter that colors every experience before you even name it. What you believe does not simply sit in your mind as an abstract idea. It shapes perception, and perception, in turn, determines the choices you make. This is the chain. Belief births perception, perception directs choice, and choice builds reality. To change belief, therefore, is to change everything downstream, not just your thoughts, not just your feelings, but the very architecture of your lived experience. Consider two people walking into the same forest at dusk. One holds the belief that the woods are dangerous, full of hidden predators, waiting eyes, unseen traps. Their perception sharpens to every rustle, every shadow. The snap of a twig becomes a threat, the cry of an owl, a warning. Their choices reflect this fear. They walk quickly, shoulders tense, eyes darting for danger, perhaps even turning back before the path is complete. The other holds the belief that the forest is sanctuary, alive with wisdom, a place where they are welcomed as kin. Their perception shifts. Each rustle is curiosity, each shadow is mystery, each owl call is guidance. Their choices reflect this trust. They walk slowly, pausing to notice, breathing with the rhythm of the trees, reaching the heart of the forest where the path opens into clearing. Same forest, same dusk, same sounds, yet belief determines perception, perception shapes choice, and choice determines the world each inhabits. So it is with all of life. If you believe money is scarce, you perceive closed doors, you notice rejection, you interpret delay as proof of lack. Your choices then mirror scarcity. You hesitate to invest in yourself, you shrink from opportunity, you grasp at crumbs instead of reaching for the feast. If you believe love is fleeting, you perceive abandonment in silence, disinterest in distraction, betrayal in forgetfulness. Your choices then mirror that fear. You cling, you push away, you sabotage the very intimacy you long for. But if you believe abundance flows, you perceive opportunities everywhere, you notice generosity, you interpret setbacks as redirection. Your choices then mirror abundance. You give, you trust, you risk, and reality meets you with echoes of plenty. Belief is the root, reality is the fruit. This is why affirmations without belief fall flat. They attempt to change the fruit without tending the root. You cannot tape apples onto a barren tree and call it an orchard. You must nurture the soil of belief, water it with trust, prune it of doubt, and in time the fruit emerges not as performance but as inevitability. Belief is covenant, the unspoken agreement you hold with life about what is possible, what is safe, what is inevitable. Change the covenant, and the world you inhabit shifts accordingly. So here is the practice. Identify one belief that has been shaping your perception negatively, a root that has been souring the fruit. Write it plainly: life is unfair, or I am always left behind, or success is for others, not for me. Then challenge it not with empty positivity but with coherence. Ask, is this belief absolutely true? Where did it come from? Does it reflect who I am now, or is it an inheritance from someone else's fear? And then reframe it into a covenant you are willing to live by. Life is responsive, it meets me as I meet it, or I am supported in ways seen and unseen, or success flows to me as I align with my gifts. Speak it aloud. Notice how it alters your perception, even subtly. Notice how your choices shift, even slightly. This is the power of recalibrating belief. For once you understand this chain belief to perception to choice, you recognize that you are not at the mercy of random circumstance. You are the lighthouse keeper, polishing the lens of your own seeing, ensuring that what you broadcast is clear, steady, and aligned. The sea will always surge, storms will always come, but if your light shines true, the ships will find their way to you. And so we move now toward the deeper work, installing new signals, anchoring them not only in mind but in body, so that belief becomes not fragile theory but lived resonance. Belief, if it remains only in the mind, is fragile. It flickers like a candle in a draft, easily extinguished by the winds of doubt, the storms of circumstance, or the whispers of old programming. To become stable, belief must move beyond thought and root itself into the body, because the body is the altar where vibration becomes flesh, where signal becomes rhythm, where invisible frequencies translate into lived presence. This is why we speak of somatic anchors, gestures, postures, breath patterns that bind belief into the very fabric of your nervous system, so that when your mind wavers, your body remembers. Just as a tuning peg holds the string of a harp at the proper tension, preventing it from collapsing into dissonance, so too does the body hold belief taut and resonant, ready to sound its true note again and again. Think of how easily the body reveals belief without words. A person who believes themselves unworthy slumps, their shoulders folding inward, their chest caved as though apologizing for existing. A person who believes themselves confident lifts their chin, expands their chest, walks with rhythm that says, I belong here. Even without speaking, the belief is communicated, broadcasted through posture, gait, breath. This is not performance, it is resonance. The body hums the frequency of belief, and the field responds accordingly. To change belief, then, is not only to shift thought, but to recalibrate the body so that it can carry the new frequency without collapse. Here is the anchor. Place your hand upon your heart, slowly, with presence, not as a casual gesture but as consecration. Feel the warmth of your palm meeting the steady rhythm beneath, the unbroken beat that has carried you through every moment of doubt and triumph alike. This pulse is proof that you are already aligned with life, for it beats without your command, a signal older than thought itself. Now breathe into that point, inhale gently for a count of 4, pause, exhale for a count of 6, and let the body soften. As you breathe, speak a triad of affirmations, not whispered as weak hope but declared as embodied truth. I am worthy, I am aligned, I am luminous. Say them not to convince the mind, but to teach the body, to let the vibration of each word settle into muscle, into bone, into breath. Repeat this practice daily, not as superstition but as tuning. Each time you anchor belief in the body, you stretch the string of resonance a little tighter, a little clearer. Over time, the frequency stabilizes. Doubt may still arrive, as fog upon the sea, but the lighthouse of your body still shines, because its lamp is tended not only in thought but in breath, in pulse, in posture. This is the difference between fragile theory and embodied signal. One collapses in the storm, the other stands steady. So remember, belief is not something you merely think, it is something you wear, something you breathe, something you inhabit. Let your body be the altar, your breath the offering, your pulse the proof. And in this way, the transmitter grows strong, ready to broadcast not mixed, fractured messages, but a single, coherent signal into the field. Which brings us to the next work, removing the static, clearing away the interference that dilutes the message so that the broadcast is not only strong but pure. Even a strong transmitter can falter if the line is cluttered with interference, for no matter how radiant your belief, if it is surrounded by static, the signal becomes distorted, scattered, weakened before it can reach the field with clarity. Static enters from many places, some external, some internal, and without boundaries to guard your vibration. You risk spending your days broadcasting one frequency while unconsciously layering it with another. The result is mixed results, half-answered intentions, echoes that confuse rather than confirm. Imagine a castle with open gates, where travelers, merchants, and strangers pass freely, but also invaders and thieves. Without guardianship, the treasure within cannot remain safe. So too with your energy. Boundaries are not walls of isolation but moats of discernment, ensuring that what enters your field nourishes rather than corrodes. Static can come from obvious sources, the endless churn of media designed not to uplift but to agitate, conversations steeped in cynicism, environments where fear is traded like currency. It can also come from subtle places, inherited family narratives whispered so often they masquerade as truth, self-talk that replays old failures, even the quiet habit of comparison that sows seeds of inadequacy. Left unchecked, these signals mingle with your own, clouding the frequency, making it harder for your belief to transmit steadily. The universe does not punish you for static, it simply mirrors back the confused broadcast. If you are asking for peace but constantly consuming conflict, your signal is fractured. If you are calling for abundance but feeding daily on scarcity's language, your signal is split. The practice here is one of conscious guardianship. Begin by choosing one gate to guard today. Perhaps it is your digital consumption deciding that you will not let every headline, every scroll, every algorithm determine the texture of your frequency. Perhaps it is conversation choosing to step back from circles that thrive on complaint and stepping instead into spaces where gratitude is the shared dialect. Perhaps it is internal listening to your own thought patterns with the patience of a scribe, catching the whispers of self-sabotage before they gain momentum, and gently replacing them with alignment. Boundaries are not about exile, they are about stewardship. You are the keeper of your field, and every gate you guard preserves the clarity of your signal. Picture again the lighthouse from our earlier parable. Its beam is strong when its glass is polished, but if smudges, dust, and grime cover the lens, the light is scattered, dulled, obscured. Static is that grime, and boundaries are the cloth with which you polish. Each act of clearing, turning off noise, declining a draining conversation, choosing words of coherence is a stroke that brightens the lens, ensuring the light can cut through the fog unbroken. Over time, these small acts accumulate, and your signal becomes not only strong but unmistakably pure. Guard your gates with love, not fear. Do not barricade yourself in suspicion but cultivate discernment rooted in self-respect. Say quietly to yourself, I am worthy of a clear signal, and I choose to protect it. This choice, repeated daily, transforms static into silence, and in that silence, belief can hum with power undisturbed. And from this clarity, you are ready to test the transmitter itself, to see how the field responds when your signal is strong, steady, and clean. Belief grows not only through theory or ritual but through proof, and proof does not always arrive in grand miracles or thunderclap revelations. More often it comes in small, gentle echoes, micro-experiments that allow you to test the transmitter, to feel the responsiveness of the field in ways so ordinary they border on invisible, yet once noticed, they become undeniable. Think of a child learning to walk. They do not sprint on the first attempt. They wobble, they stumble, they reach for the table, the chair, the steady hand of a parent. Each tiny step is an experiment, and each success, however brief, becomes evidence. I can move. I can balance. I can try again. In the same way, micro-experiments in belief allow you to take small steps of trust, and each time the field responds, you gather evidence that strengthens the muscle of faith. The trap most fall into is demanding overwhelming proof before taking the first step. If the universe is real, show me something so huge I cannot doubt it. But this is like asking to play a symphony before learning a single note, like demanding to harvest a field before planting the seed. Belief does not work this way. It begins small, in whispers, in coincidences that might be dismissed if you were not watching. The point is not to overwhelm you with spectacle, but to attune you to responsiveness, to teach you to notice the subtle hum beneath the noise. Each micro-experiment is a tuning fork, struck lightly, whose vibration ripples outward until it returns to you as echo. So here is the practice. Today, choose one small request, one intention so modest it carries no weight of desperation. It might be, I would like to see a feather today, or let a stranger smile at me, or show me the number sequence 111 before the day ends. Do not grasp it, do not cling, do not obsessively search. Simply set the intention clearly, smile, and release it into the field. Then go about your day with lightness, as though you have planted a seed and trust the soil to do its work. If, before night falls, you notice a feather on the sidewalk, or a stranger smiling for no reason, or the sequence appearing on a receipt, you will have your proof not of spectacle but of responsiveness. The field heard, the signal carried, the echo returned. Do not underestimate the power of these small proofs. Each one is like kindling placed upon the fire of belief, and though a single twig does not blaze, the accumulation of many ignites a flame that cannot be ignored. Over time, your mind shifts from maybe this works to of course it works, not because someone told you, but because you have lived the evidence in your own skin. And once the fire of belief is kindled, larger intentions can be carried without strain, for the transmitter has been tested, strengthened, proven in practice. Approach these micro-experiments with playfulness, not pressure. They are not exams you can fail, but conversations you are learning to notice. And with each echo, with each subtle sign, the relationship between you and the universe deepens, becoming less about doubt and more about dialogue. This is the heart of faith. Not blind obedience, but lived experience. The accumulation of small moments that together build unshakable certainty. From these experiments, you will step naturally into the art of asking. For once you have tested the transmitter and felt its reply, you are ready to speak with clarity into the field itself. Before we move into the sacred art of asking, let us pause and gather the threads of what has been revealed, for integration is as important as revelation. Without pausing, the lessons scatter like seeds cast into wind. With pause, they take root in the soil of memory and begin to grow. We began this passage of the journey with the parable of the lighthouse, reminding us that belief is the lamp by which ships find their way, the transmitter that stabilizes the signal of intention. We saw how unworthiness, doubt, and neglect can dim that light. But we also discovered that tending it, polishing the lens, feeding the flame restores its brilliance. Then we unfolded the teaching of the chain. Belief births perception, perception directs choice, choice creates reality. We recognize how the covenant we hold with life determines not only what we see but how we act, and thus what we receive. We anchored this in the body, discovering that belief must be embodied to endure, woven into breath and posture, so that even when the mind falters, the body remembers. We explored the sources of static, the ways unguarded gates let interference weaken the broadcast, and we reclaimed our responsibility as keepers of the signal by guarding our field with discernment. And finally, we practiced micro-experiments, gentle proofs that remind us the universe is not distant but responsive, whispering back in small signs that our signal is indeed heard. Now, pause with me. Place a hand once more upon your heart, not as repetition for the sake of habit, but as deepening, as confirmation that what has been spoken is now remembered within you. Inhale slowly, as though you are receiving, drawing into yourself the clarity of all that has been learned. Hold that breath for a moment, feeling the fullness, the steadiness, the proof of life itself. Then exhale, as though releasing, letting go of tension, of doubt, of any remnants of static that cling to your edges. Repeat this once more. Inhale, receiving, exhale, releasing. Feel how even this simple rhythm echoes the larger truth you are in constant dialogue with the universe. Each inhale a gift received, each exhale a message sent. Gratitude seals the breath. Whisper now a quiet thank you not only for the teachings but for the presence that carries you here, listening, remembering, opening. Gratitude is the compass that warms in your palm, the map that unfolds with each step. With it you signal to the field, I have received, I am aligned, I am ready for more. And with that readiness, we now cross the threshold into the next stage. Having tuned the transmitter of belief, purified it through boundaries, and tested it through gentle experiments, you are prepared to speak clearly into the field. The time has come to ask not with vagueness or desperation, but with clarity, confidence, and resonance. The dialogue shifts now from preparation to articulation, from tuning to transmission. The universe is listening. The question is, what will you say? In a coastal town where fog often rolled thick across the waters and ships would circle aimlessly, unsure where the shoreline lay, there lived a harbor master whose duty was simple yet sacred: to sound the great bell at the edge of the pier. This bell, once struck, carried a deep and steady tone across the bay, guiding captains towards safety. But the harbor master knew a secret. The bell need not be struck endlessly, nor with frantic force. If he sounded it once, clearly and with full intent, its vibration traveled far, echoing against cliffs, carried by air and water alike. The captains, straining their ears in the fog, heard it and turned their ships toward home. If he rang it over and over in panic, however, the sound became noise, confusing the signal, and the sailors, uncertain which call was true, would hesitate. So he rang it once, confidently, and then trusted the sea to do its part. This is the parable of asking. To ask is not to plead, not to repeat anxiously as though the universe were deaf, but to sound the bell once, with clarity, with resonance, with trust that the signal will carry. Many treat asking as begging, clutching their desires like desperate prayers, repeating them with urgency, believing that louder or more frequent requests will force a response. But in truth, this only creates static, like the harbor master striking the bell again and again until the tone becomes muddied. The field is not deaf. The universe does not require persuasion. One clear request, aligned with intention, powered by belief, spoken once with presence, is enough. Ask yourself, how often have you prayed, affirmed, or written a desire again and again, not out of devotion, but out of fear that it was not heard the first time? Did you notice how such repetition often left you feeling smaller, more doubtful, as though each request carried less strength than the one before? This is the energy of desperation, and desperation does not broadcast clarity, it broadcasts lack. To ring the bell once is to declare, I trust, I believe, I know my request has been received. Anything beyond that is the mind scrambling to control what is already in motion. The harbor master teaches us that confidence in asking is not arrogance, it is alignment. When you ask once with clarity, you are signaling not only to the universe but to yourself that you trust the process. The vibration is carried, the echo will return, the ship will find its way to harbor. Your task is not to shout louder, but to stay steady, to keep the light burning, to allow the field to do its part. So here is the practice. Choose one request right now, something you long for but can articulate clearly. Speak it aloud once, not softly as if ashamed, nor loudly as if demanding, but steadily, as though striking the bell. Then pause. Smile, even faintly, as if acknowledging that the sound has already traveled farther than you can see. Trust that it has been heard. Your role from here is not to ring again and again, but to stay aligned with the vibration of what you have asked for. Remember the harbor master standing on the pier, ringing the bell once into the fog, and then standing calmly, knowing the tone was already guiding ships toward him. Let this be your image whenever you feel the urge to repeat in panic. The signal has already been sent, the captains are already turning, the field has already responded. Ask once, clearly, and let the vibration carry. If the harbor master teaches us that asking must be clear and confident, then the formula we now step into shows us how to shape that clarity so the signal is unmistakable. Think of it as building a flame. The what is the wax, solid and specific, giving structure to the fire. The why is the wick, the thread of purpose that channels energy upward. And the feeling is the flame itself, the light and heat that make the signal visible to the world. Without wax, the flame has nothing to burn. Without the wick, the wax cannot be drawn upward. Without the flame, the candle remains inert. But together, what, why, and feeling your request becomes alive, resonant, undeniable. Begin with what. The field does not respond to vagueness, it responds to definition. To say I want abundance leaves infinite interpretations. Abundance of what? Time, money, peace, friendships, challenges? But to say I am receiving financial abundance through my creative work, 10,000 each month flowing consistently in ways that uplift others, is to sculpt the signal with precision. The what is your architecture, your blueprint drawn with clear lines. Without it, you risk asking for a house and receiving a hut, or asking for love and receiving chaos disguised as passion. Specificity is not control, it is clarity. Then, the why. The universe does not trade in hollow requests. It listens for alignment, for the heartbeat behind the words. Why do you desire what you ask for? Is it to prove something to others? To soothe an insecurity? To cover fear with glitter? These motives broadcast scarcity, and scarcity warps the signal. But when your why arises from value, from service, from harmony, the signal carries a strength that cannot be ignored. To say, I desire abundance so I can live in freedom and support causes that heal others, is to align your request with integrity, ensuring that what you call forth is not only for you but for the greater fabric of life. The why transforms your request from selfish demand into co-creative resonance. Finally, the feeling. Words alone are ink without current, blueprints without electricity. It is the emotional alignment, the embodied vibration, that animates them. When you state your request, you must also feel it as though it were already true. Ask yourself, if this were already real, what would I feel in my body right now? Relief, gratitude, joy, safety, freedom? Then embody that state in the moment of asking. Say the words while breathing the emotion, while letting your chest expand, your shoulders soften, your heart open. This is the flame that makes the candle burn. Without it, your request is only cold wax and silent wick. So here is the formula in practice. Speak aloud 3 lines. Line 1, what? I am receiving specific desire. Line 2, why? I desire this because rooted value. Line 3, feeling. I feel emotion knowing this is already real. Pause after each line, breathing into the truth of it, letting the resonance settle not only in your mind but in your body. Do not rush, do not doubt. Simply speak, feel, release. In this way, you are no longer casting vague wishes into the void but crafting resonant requests that the field can echo back with precision. The wax, the wick, and the flame together create the candle of asking, and once it is lit, the signal travels farther than you can imagine. And yet, once lit, it must also be released, for a flame cannot be clutched in the hand. This brings us to the next truth, the art of detachment, where asking becomes trust and trust becomes freedom. There is a paradox at the heart of asking. You must desire enough to declare, but not cling so tightly that your request collapses under the weight of your own grip. This is the art of detachment, and it is often misunderstood. Many confuse detachment with disengagement, as though to detach were to stop caring, to withdraw, to renounce desire altogether. But detachment is not indifference. It is not apathy. It is freedom. It is the open hand extended to the universe, rather than the clenched fist that crushes what it tries to hold. Disengagement says, I no longer care whether this comes or not. Detachment says, I care deeply, but I trust so fully that I do not need to control how or when it arrives. One severs connection, the other deepens it. Imagine holding a bird in your palm. If you clutch it tightly, terrified it might fly away, you suffocate it, and the very thing you long to keep is destroyed by your fear. If you open your hand and disengage, letting it fall away entirely, you lose the possibility of companionship. But if you hold your palm open steady, gentle, the bird rests there freely, perhaps even returning to you again and again, not because you forced it, but because you created space for it to belong. This is detachment, to love without grip, to trust without control, to allow without fear. When you ask with clarity, powered by belief, anchored in feeling, you must then release the how and the when. These belong not to you but to the intelligence of the field, which has a perspective far wider than yours. To demand timing is to distrust. To demand method is to limit the infinite pathways through which your desire might arrive. The field does not respond to urgency, it responds to frequency. And urgency, at its core, is the vibration of lack. When you release, when you relax your grip, your signal becomes steady, clean, open, and the universe can weave its response without obstruction. Detachment is a practice, not a one-time insight. Each day, you may feel the tug to check the soil where you planted your seed, to dig it up to see if it has sprouted. But you must resist, for constant checking interrupts the growth. Instead, water it with trust, expose it to gratitude, and know that beneath the surface something is already happening. The absence of visible evidence is not the absence of progress. The roots are forming, the signal has been received, the field is arranging itself. Your work is to hold steady, to stay aligned, to let go of the grip that squeezes life out of your request. Practice it now. Place your hands before you, palms open, fingers relaxed. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, whisper quietly, I allow the how, I allow the when. I trust the unfolding. Feel the release in your body as you speak these words. Notice how your shoulders lower, your breath deepens, your chest softens. This is detachment embodied, the physical echo of spiritual trust. Repeat it as often as needed, especially when you feel anxiety creeping in, when impatience tempts you to force, when fear whispers that silence means nothing is happening. Detachment does not weaken your request, it strengthens it. It signals to the universe that you are aligned enough to allow, steady enough to trust, whole enough to wait. And from this wholeness, the next stage emerges naturally. Inspired action, not frantic forcing, not desperate pushing, but gentle, intuitive steps guided by the very field you have trusted. For detachment is not passivity, it is the doorway through which aligned movement enters. When the request has been made, when the bell has sounded, when the candle has burned its message into the field, there is a temptation to sit motionless and wait for reality to rearrange itself as if by magic alone. And while it is true that the universe carries much of the orchestration beyond your sight, it is also true that you are not excluded from the dance. Manifestation is not passive, it is co-creation. But here lies the subtle distinction that many miss, the difference between inspired action and force. Force is the restless energy of urgency, the panic belief that nothing will happen unless you control every variable, push every lever, strain every muscle. Inspired action, by contrast, is lightness. It is movement that feels guided, joyful, inevitable. It does not drain you, it energizes you. It is the breeze filling your sails rather than the oars you exhaust yourself pulling. Think of a farmer who has planted seeds. Force would have him digging them up each day to check their progress, watering the soil obsessively until it drowns, pacing the field in frustration. Inspired action would have him tending the soil with balance, watering when needed, clearing weeds, trusting the process, listening to the subtle cues of the earth. Both are action, but one is frantic and rooted in fear, while the other is calm and rooted in trust. The difference is vibration, and vibration determines result. The universe does not respond to how much you strain, it responds to the frequency you carry while you move. So how do you know if your action is inspired or forced? You feel it in the body. Forced action feels heavy, tense, pressured. It often comes with inner resistance, a sense of dread, or the thought, I must do this or else nothing will work. Inspired action feels light, even if it requires effort. It comes with a spark of excitement, a nudge of curiosity, the thought, I want to try this even if it makes no sense. It may still stretch you, it may still require courage, but it does not feel like depletion. Instead, it feels like alignment. The energy flows through you rather than draining from you. Practice listening for these nudges. Ask yourself each morning, what is the lightest step I can take today that moves me closer to alignment with my desire? Do not demand the entire path. Ask only for the next step. Sometimes it will be small, sending an email, tidying your space, making a phone call. Sometimes it will be bold, beginning the project, sharing your voice, walking through a door you once feared. But if it is inspired, it will carry a hum, a resonance, a quiet sense of rightness that no amount of rational planning can replicate. That hum is the field guiding you, the universe speaking back through intuition, synchronicity, and circumstance. Imagine a sailor on the open sea. Forced action has him rowing furiously, sweat pouring, body straining, yet the boat drifts off course because he has ignored the wind. Inspired action has him raise the sail, catch the breeze, adjust the rudder slightly, and suddenly the boat glides forward effortlessly, faster than oars could ever carry it. This is the difference between laboring against life and flowing with it. Inspired action is the sail, force is the oar. Which one you choose determines not only your progress but the energy with which you arrive. So release the compulsion to control every step. Replace it with trust in nudges, whispers, synchronicities. Your role is not to push the river but to follow its current, to act when called, to rest when guided, to let movement arise from alignment rather than panic. This is not laziness, it is wisdom. For when you act in inspiration, you are not alone. The universe acts with you, and what might have taken years by force unfolds in months through flow. Let this be your practice. Pause, breathe, ask quietly, what action feels aligned, light, inevitable? then take that step no matter how small. Do not wait for certainty. Certainty comes after the step, never before it. Walk lightly, and the ground will rise to meet your feet. And as you learn to listen and respond in this way, you will begin to notice the language of the universe more clearly, the signs and synchronicities that confirm you are, indeed, on the right path. When you begin to live from intention, belief, detachment, and inspired action, the world itself starts to shimmer differently. What once appeared as random coincidence reveals itself as a language, subtle but insistent, woven through your days. These are the signs and synchronicities, the quiet whispers of the universe reminding you, I heard you. The signal was received. The echo is returning. They are not accidents, not curiosities, not meaningless repetitions. They are breadcrumbs scattered along the path, red feathers dropped where you least expect them, guiding you gently but unmistakably toward the unfolding of your desire. Think of how you feel when you notice them. The sudden smile when you glance at the clock and see 11. 11. The warmth in your chest when a stranger speaks the very phrase you wrote in your journal the night before. The shock of recognition when an old friend calls the very day you were thinking of them. Logic might dismiss these as chance, but your body knows better. There is a hum beneath them, a sense of being seen, a reminder that reality is responsive. And the more you notice them, the more they appear, not because they were absent before, but because your perception, sharpened by belief, is now attuned to their frequency. Signs are not always dramatic. Sometimes they are small, fleeting, so ordinary they would slip past you if you were not watching. But in their ordinariness lies their power. They remind you that manifestation is not confined to sacred rituals or special moments, but is happening always, everywhere, woven into the fabric of daily life. The field does not speak in grand announcements alone. It speaks in whispers, in repetitions, in patterns so gentle they require presence to perceive. To notice is to participate. To ignore is to miss the dialogue unfolding around you. Synchronicity, as Carl Jung described, is meaningful coincidence, the intersection of inner state and outer event in ways that defy mere probability. But more than psychological curiosity, it is energetic confirmation. When your inner frequency aligns with your intention, reality begins to mirror it back, arranging circumstances, people, and events into coherence. This is not fantasy, it is the law of resonance. Just as a tuning fork will cause another of the same frequency to vibrate across the room, so too does your vibration call forth echoes in the world around you. Here is the practice. Begin a signs journal. Each day, record even the smallest synchronicities, the subtle alignments, the moments that feel like winks from the universe. Do not dismiss them. Do not rationalize them away, honor them. As you record them, you train your perception to notice more. And as you notice more, your belief deepens. And as your belief deepens, the field responds with even greater coherence. This spiral of recognition builds momentum, turning small confirmations into large manifestations. But here is the caution. Do not cling to signs as though they are the destination. They are not the thing itself, they are the lanterns along the path. A feather is not the fulfillment of abundance, but a whisper that abundance is near. Repeating numbers are not the love you ask for, but the echo that love is aligning. Do not mistake the signal for the harvest. Celebrate the signs, yes, but keep walking, keep trusting, keep aligning, knowing that they are guideposts, not endpoints. Let your heart soften in gratitude each time you notice one. Whisper quietly, thank you, I see it, I trust. In this way, signs become not only confirmation but conversation, an ongoing dialogue between you and the universe, a reminder that you are not wandering aimlessly but walking a guided path. And as the signs multiply, your trust grows, your patience steadies, and you learn to rest in the assurance that your desire is already unfolding. From here, the practice of asking comes full circle, sealed not only by clarity but by the blessing of gratitude in advance, the calm declaration that what is asked for is already on its way. We have walked together through the harbor, where the bell was struck once with confidence and the signal carried far into the fog. We have studied the candle of asking, built of wax and wick and flame, teaching us the formula of what, why, and feeling. We have opened our palms in detachment, learning to release the how and the when, trusting that urgency is not the language of the universe, frequency is. We have raised the sail of inspired action, choosing movement born of alignment rather than strain. And we have watched the world shimmer with signs and synchronicities, realizing that what once appeared as coincidence is in fact conversation. Each of these steps has been a stone placed carefully upon the path, and now we pause upon this bridge, gathering them into coherence, sealing them with blessing. Blessing is more than a word of comfort, it is an energetic decree, a declaration that what has been asked for is already blessed, already sanctified, already moving toward manifestation. To bless is to claim without clinging, to consecrate without controlling, to declare, this is already whole, already heard, already unfolding in the highest way. When you bless your request, you are not pleading for approval, you are affirming alignment. You are saying to the universe, I trust you. I release this into your keeping. I stand ready to receive in the right form, at the right time. Pause here. Place your hand once more upon your heart and breathe deeply. As you inhale, imagine drawing in the resonance of everything we have explored in this chapter of asking, the clarity, the confidence, the release, the trust. As you exhale, whisper softly, it is on its way, in the right way. Feel the vibration of those words as they ripple through you, not as fragile hope but as steady certainty. Repeat it again, not as demand but as blessing. It is on its way, in the right way. Each time you say it, imagine it sealing the signal like wax pressed with a sacred seal, ensuring that the message travels without distortion. Notice how this blessing shifts your state. Where once there may have been impatience, there is now calm. Where there may have been doubt, there is now quiet assurance. Blessing is the act of stepping out of lack into trust, of crossing the unseen bridge that carries you from desire to manifestation. And as you cross, you feel the shift in your body, the widening of your breath, the easing of your chest, the sense that something is already moving on your behalf. This is where we stand now, on the bridge of trust, carrying the clarity of asking, the strength of belief, the resonance of feeling, and the blessing of release. From here, we step into the sacred pause, the season of waiting, where growth happens unseen, where roots deepen beneath the soil, where patience becomes power. For the universe does not always move at the speed of our urgency, but it always moves at the frequency of our trust. And in that trust, we will learn the art of divine timing. In a quiet valley surrounded by rolling hills and nourished by a gentle river, there lived a farmer whose devotion to his fields was unmatched. Each spring, he prepared the soil with care, sowed seeds in neat rows, and watered them with diligence. But he carried within him a restlessness, an impatience that gnawed at his trust. Each day after planting, he would walk into the field, kneel down, and dig into the earth to see if the seeds had sprouted. Again and again, he disrupted the soil, searching for signs of growth. But the more he disturbed them, the more the roots were broken, the sprouts delayed, the harvest postponed. At last, weary and disheartened, he sat at the edge of his field, convinced the earth was deaf to his labor. One evening, as the sun set golden over the valley, an old traveler passed by and saw the farmer's despair. He asked why the crops had not risen, and the farmer confessed his ritual of digging. The traveler chuckled softly and said, "The seed does not grow because you doubt its growth. Each time you dig, you interrupt the very process you long to hasten. The soil knows what to do. The rain knows when to fall. The sun knows when to shine. Your task is not to dig in doubt, but to trust in timing. Plant, water, wait, and the harvest will come." The farmer listened, and though the advice seemed too simple, he obeyed. That season, for the first time, he resisted the urge to disturb the soil. He watered, he waited, he trusted. And by autumn, the field was heavy with grain, more abundant than he had ever seen. This is the parable of divine timing. We are all like the farmer, tempted to check the soil of our desires every day, to measure progress with anxious fingers, to demand visible evidence before trust has matured. And in doing so, we often delay the very harvest we seek. For growth takes time, and timing belongs not to our impatience but to the intelligence of the field. The roots form in darkness before the sprout pierces the surface. The unseen work precedes the visible result. To dig in doubt is to disturb that sacred process. To wait in trust is to allow it to unfold. How many times have you planted a desire, spoken it, felt it, blessed it only to sabotage it with constant checking, with restless obsession, with thoughts that whisper, "Why hasn't it happened yet? Maybe it never will." Each of those moments is a hand digging into the soil, uprooting the seed before it can grow. But when you trust, when you allow the unseen to do its work, you honor the rhythm of creation. You align with the law of ripeness, which says, everything comes when it is ready, not when it is forced. The practice here is simple yet profound. Identify one place in your life where you have been digging the soil too often. Perhaps you are checking your bank account every hour, waiting for abundance to appear. Perhaps you are rereading messages, straining for signs of love. Perhaps you are rehearsing outcomes in your mind, unable to rest in trust. Name it and then gently release it. Say to yourself, I will water, I will tend, but I will not dig. I trust the timing of this seed. Imagine yourself stepping back from the field, watching the horizon, breathing with the rhythm of sun and rain, knowing the soil is alive with processes beyond your sight. In this way, you become like the farmer who learned to wait not in apathy but in faith, not in idleness but in trust. And when the harvest comes, as it always does when seeds are tended with patience, you will find that the waiting was not empty at all. It was the very space in which life was weaving your desire into reality. There exists a hidden dimension in every act of creation, one that most overlook because it feels like nothingness, like silence, like stillness. And yet this pause is not empty. It is fertile, alive, humming with unseen activity. Just as music is made not only of notes, but of the spaces between them, manifestation is made not only of intention, belief, and action, but of the sacred pause that allows the field to breathe life into your request. The pause is not absence, it is incubation. It is the womb of reality, the quiet chamber where seeds gestate, roots deepen, and alignment ripens, until the right moment for emergence arrives. We live in a culture that fears pause, that worships movement, that equates stillness with failure. To sit in silence feels unproductive. To wait feels irresponsible. To trust feels naive. And so we rush, we push, we demand, filling every moment with noise, every silence with chatter, every breath with urgency. But this constant movement is not alignment, it is escape. It is digging at the soil again and again, terrified that nothing is happening beneath. The sacred pause asks something different of us: to stop, to breathe, to allow, to surrender into the stillness with confidence that even when nothing appears to be moving, everything is. Picture a lake at dawn, its surface still, reflecting the sky with perfect clarity. It seems as though nothing stirs beneath, and yet life teems below the surface, fish swimming, plants swaying, currents shifting. The stillness above does not negate the activity below, it makes it visible. The same is true of your own manifestation. When you allow yourself to pause, when you quiet the frantic noise of the mind, you begin to notice subtle movements, the gentle nudge of intuition, the quiet arrival of synchronicity, the faint whisper of guidance that would be drowned in chaos. The pause creates the conditions for perception, the silence in which the universe speaks. Practice this sacred pause now. Close your eyes, inhale slowly, exhale fully. Then allow yourself 3 minutes of complete stillness. Do not reach for your phone, do not fill the space with planning, do not strain for results. Simply sit as the lake sits, reflecting, receiving, allowing. Notice how uncomfortable it may feel at first, how the mind rebels, how the body fidgets, and yet notice also how, with each passing breath, something softens. The silence once foreign becomes familiar. The pause, once unbearable, becomes sanctuary. This is the doorway into trust, the rhythm of surrender. The sacred pause is not wasted time, it is alignment. It is the moment the archer stills before releasing the arrow, the breath between inhale and exhale, the quiet in which a seed splits its shell and begins its unseen journey upward. To honor the pause is to honor the intelligence of the universe, to declare with your stillness, I trust that what I have asked for is alive and moving toward me, even when I cannot see it. Let this become part of your practice. Each day, gift yourself a pause, not as discipline but as devotion. 3 minutes of silence, 3 minutes of surrender, 3 minutes of simply being with the unfolding. In those minutes, you are not waiting, you are participating in the deepest way possible, by letting go of control and allowing the field to do its work. And when you rise from the pause, you rise different, softer, steadier, more attuned. From this stillness, you can step back into life not with desperation but with confidence, for you have tasted the truth. The pause is not empty. The pause is the very ground where manifestation takes root. The most stubborn chains in the process of manifestation are not forged of disbelief in what is possible, but of obsession with how and when it must come to pass. The human mind, trained by calendars and clocks, bound by deadlines and demands, believes that everything must be scheduled, controlled, and neatly explained. And so, even when you have planted the seed of intention, even when belief has stabilized, even when the request has been spoken clearly, the mind still whispers, "But how will it happen? When will it arrive? What if it never comes?" These questions masquerade as prudence, but in truth they are fear wearing logic's mask. They broadcast a frequency of doubt, sending out the signal, "I do not yet trust. I must control what I have already surrendered." And that very grip creates resistance, like a clenched hand that cannot receive what is offered. Consider the river. Its course bends, its pace shifts, its surface swells with rain or sinks in drought, but always it moves toward the sea. No traveler sitting by its bank can predict every turn, every eddy, every wave. Yet the outcome is certain. The river will meet the ocean. To demand to know exactly how each drop will flow is absurd. And yet this is what we do with our desires, trying to choreograph each step of their unfolding, instead of trusting that the current is wiser than our limited sight. And to demand that the river reach the sea by our chosen hour is equally absurd, for the waters obey not our impatience, but the laws of gravity, terrain, and flow. The current carries everything at its appointed pace, and the sea waits without hurry. The practice of letting go of how and when is not passive resignation but active trust. It is the recognition that your task is alignment, not orchestration. You are not the conductor of the universe's symphony. You are an instrument within it. The melody does not depend on your insistence, it depends on your tuning. When you release the need to dictate method and timing, you free the universe to deliver in ways you could not have predicted, on timelines that honor both your readiness and the greater harmony of all things. Often, the very attachment to how and when delays manifestation, because the field cannot move fluidly when bound by your rigid expectations. Practice this release in the body. Place your fists tightly clenched before you. Feel the tension in your knuckles, the strain in your arms. This is the energy of control, of demanding how and when. Now, slowly, open your hands, spread your fingers wide. Feel the release ripple up your arms, across your chest, through your breath. This is the energy of trust, the vibration of allowing. Whisper as you exhale, "I release the how, I release the when, I trust the flow." Repeat it until your body softens, until your breath deepens, until the grip loosens not only in your hands but in your heart. Remember, the universe responds not to urgency but to frequency. Urgency is static, born of fear. Frequency is resonance, born of alignment. The seed does not rush, the sun does not hurry, the river does not ask when. They move according to laws older and wiser than urgency, and in their timing, everything ripens. Trust that you are no exception. Your desires, once aligned, are already moving, already ripening, already on their way. Your task is not to pull at the sprout or push at the river, but to stay tuned, to stay open, to stay grateful, knowing that in the fullness of time, neither too early nor too late, what you ask for will arrive. At the heart of every teaching we have walked through, there lies a golden thread that weaves them into coherence, and that thread is detachment. It is the master key, the silent principle that unlocks the doors which belief, intention, and asking have already prepared. Without it, the signal wavers, the frequency is muddled, the field receives mixed messages that delay the unfolding. With it, the signal becomes clear, steady, unwavering, like a tone struck once on a great bell that echoes for miles. Detachment is not about denial of desire, nor is it about turning away from the things you love. It is about holding them with such wholeness in yourself that you do not collapse into lack when they are absent. It is the recognition that you are already complete, that you are already rooted in the source from which all things arise, and therefore you need not grasp or beg for what is already aligned with your vibration. Think of water flowing into an open vessel. If the vessel is clenched, if the hands grasp at it, the water spills, the current cannot enter. But if the vessel rests open, steady, receptive, the water flows naturally, filling it to its brim. Detachment is that open vessel. It says, "I desire, yes, but I do not need this to prove my worth, to complete my identity, to validate my existence." And in that state of openness, the desire flows more easily, because it is not weighed down by desperation. Neediness collapses frequency. Wholeness amplifies it. Detachment is also protection from illusion. How many times have you believed that a particular path, a specific person, or a certain job was the only possible way for your desire to manifest? And how many times, when that door closed, did another open, leading to something better than you could have scripted? When you are attached to form, you limit the universe. You demand that the infinite bend to your narrow expectation. But when you are detached, you give the field freedom to surprise you, to exceed you, to weave outcomes you never imagined. Detachment says, this or something better, aligned with my highest good. And in that openness, the universe has room to act. Practice detachment by affirming wholeness. Whisper to yourself, I am already whole. I am already worthy. I am already complete. What I ask for is not to fill a void, but to amplify what is already alive in me. Feel how different this energy is from pleading. Feel the steadiness it brings, the peace that comes when you no longer grip your desires as lifelines, but hold them as gifts that may arrive when the time is right. Let your body soften as you breathe into this truth. Detachment is not losing, it is allowing. It is not emptiness, it is readiness. In every chapter we have explored, detachment has waited quietly beneath the surface. When the farmer stopped digging his seeds, it was detachment. When the harbor master rang the bell once and trusted the sound to carry, it was detachment. When the sailor raised the sail instead of rowing furiously, it was detachment. Always it is the same, a release of control, a trust in timing, a wholeness that precedes manifestation. This is why it is the master key. Without it, you are locked in struggle. With it, the door swings open into flow. Carry this key with reverence. Place it in the center of your practice. Whenever you feel yourself clenching, gripping, demanding, return to detachment. Say quietly, I allow. I trust. I am whole. And in that openness, watch how life begins to rearrange itself, how opportunities appear unforced, how desires arrive without strain. For detachment is not the end of desire, it is the condition that allows desire to manifest without resistance, in ways more graceful, more surprising, and more abundant than you could ever have planned. No matter how deeply you practice intention, belief, asking, and detachment, there will come moments when doubt creeps in like a fog across the shoreline. You may find yourself wondering if anything is truly happening, if the signals you've sent have been received, if the silence is proof of absence rather than the gestation of presence. Delay, too, will test you, stretching your patience, tempting you to conclude that nothing is working, that the soil is barren, that the universe has somehow overlooked your request. But hear this clearly. Doubt is not failure, and delay is not denial. They are part of the path, not deviations from it. Doubt is like a passing cloud that obscures the sun. For a time, it darkens your view, convinces you that light is gone, makes you forget warmth. But the sun itself has not moved. It shines as steadily as ever. Your desire, once aligned, continues its journey even when unseen. The only question is whether you will identify with the cloud or with the certainty of the light behind it. Delay, meanwhile, is the stretching of time to ensure readiness. It is the ripening of fruit that cannot be hurried without spoiling. It is the strengthening of roots that must deepen before the branches can bear the weight of blossoms. What feels like stillness is often preparation. What feels like waiting is often weaving. The key is not to eliminate doubt, but to navigate it. When it arises, notice it without judgment. Say to yourself, this is a thought, not a truth. Ask gently, is this urgent or is this true? Recall the times in your life when outcomes arrived long after you stopped straining, when blessings came in forms you did not predict. Let memory anchor you, for memory is the antidote to fear. Each past manifestation is a lantern, reminding you that silence does not equal abandonment, that delay often precedes abundance. When you feel the weight of delay pressing on you, shift the narrative. Instead of asking, why is this not here yet? Ask, what is this delay preparing me for? What strength, patience, or clarity is being cultivated in me while I wait? This reframing transforms waiting from punishment into initiation, from emptiness into training. The universe does not test to break you, it stretches you to fit what you are becoming. Practice navigating doubt with counter-belief journaling. When the thought arises, it's taking too long, write instead, it is unfolding in perfect timing. When the fear whispers, maybe it won't happen, respond, what if it happens better than I imagine? When the ache says, I feel stuck, answer, roots grow deepest before shoots appear. In this way, You train your mind to return again and again to alignment, to treat doubt not as a verdict but as a signal to reaffirm your trust. Remember this: the universe is not on your clock, it is on your frequency. The silence between your request and its arrival is not wasted. It is the sacred pause, the unseen weaving, the incubation of reality. Doubt may visit, delay may linger, but neither has the power to undo what is aligned. Your task is not to eradicate them, but to walk through them, steady, breathing, blessing, whispering again and again. The sun is still shining, the seed is still growing. My request is already alive. We have walked through the chambers of asking with clarity. We have rung the bell once and trusted its echo. We have built the candle of what, why, and feeling. We have released the grip of control by learning detachment. We have raised the sail of inspired action rather than rowing with force. And we have trained our eyes to see the signs and synchronicities that shimmer all around us. We have honored the sacred pause, letting stillness become sanctuary. We have loosened our grip on how and when. We have held the master key of detachment in our palm, and we have learned to navigate doubt and delay without losing faith in the unseen. All of these steps form a pattern now, like threads woven into a tapestry, distinct when studied alone but revealing a larger image when seen together. That image is trust. A trust not born of naive optimism, but of lived alignment, practiced faith, and remembered truth. And so, before we cross from this bridge of trust into the land of inspired action that carries us further, let us pause here and seal everything with gratitude. Gratitude is not an afterthought, it is the completion of alignment, the closing of the circuit, the energy that turns intention into embodiment. When you give thanks in advance, you are declaring that what you have asked for is already real in the unseen, that your trust is so complete you celebrate before the harvest arrives. Gratitude is both an offering and a magnet. It honors what is given while drawing more to you. It is the soil's way of saying yes to the seed, the river's way of saying yes to the rain, the heart's way of saying yes to life itself. Place your hand once more upon your chest and whisper 3 gratitudes. The first, for something you already hold in your life, now a blessing visible, tangible, undeniable. The second, for something unseen but moving toward you, a desire already alive in the field, though not yet arrived in form. The third, for the very process itself, for the waiting, the lessons, the pauses, the doubts, even the delays. For all of it has been shaping you, stretching you, preparing you to receive, not as one who grasps desperately, but as one who welcomes with wholeness. Feel the warmth of those 3 gratitudes rise in your body, softening your breath, steadying your pulse, expanding your chest with quiet assurance. This is the essence of alignment: to live as though what you ask for is already here, to bless it before it arrives, to thank it before it manifests. Gratitude transforms waiting from emptiness into fullness, from longing into celebration. And in that celebration, you become magnetic, radiant, ready. With this, we seal the chapter of asking and trust, and we prepare to step into the rhythm of inspired action. Not action born of fear or force, but steps guided by intuition, lightness, and flow. The foundation is set, the blessing is spoken, the compass is warm in your hand. Whisper once more, thank you, it is done, it is on its way in the right way. And with that whisper, we step forward. On the edge of a wide and restless sea lived a fisherman who had spent his whole life chasing the tides, casting his nets with furious energy, rowing against waves, straining his muscles until his back ached and his hands blistered. Each morning he rose before dawn, desperate to fill his boat, certain that if he did not push harder, row faster, work longer, he would return home empty. And though sometimes he caught fish, more often he returned with little, his nets torn, his spirit weary, his body worn. One evening, exhausted and nearly broken, he sat at the shore watching the horizon. There, he noticed another fisherman, one who moved differently, calm, patient, attentive. This man cast his net, not constantly, but only when the tide shifted, only when the ripples on the surface told him that a school had gathered below. He did not fight the sea. He read it, trusted it, and worked with it. His boat was always full, not because he labored more, but because he aligned with the rhythm of the waters. The weary fisherman asked him, "How do you always return with abundance while I strain and return with so little?" The calm fisherman smiled and said, "Because I listen to the sea. I do not demand that it provide at my command. I wait until it tells me, and then I act. My net is not heavier than yours, but my trust is. My arms are not stronger than yours, but my patience is. The sea does not respond to force, it responds to harmony. This parable is our reminder that inspired action is not frantic striving. It is the art of laying down the heavy nets of desperation, of ceasing to force results through sheer exhaustion, and instead tuning to the subtle signals that guide us to move at the right time, in the right way. Too often we, like the first fisherman, mistake struggle for progress, believing that the harder we push, the more we must achieve. But struggle without alignment only wears us down and tears our nets. True abundance comes not from strain but from synergy, from listening, from allowing the tide itself to carry us where we need to be. So ask yourself, where in your life are you rowing furiously against the current, straining to make something happen by force? Where are you tearing your nets because you cannot trust the rhythm of the tide? And where might you instead pause, breathe, listen, and act only when guided by the nudge of intuition, the shift in the current, the whisper of synchronicity? Practice this now. Close your eyes and imagine yourself holding a heavy net, dragging it through the waters of your life, exhausted and aching. Then, in your mind, lay the net down. Feel the relief in your shoulders, the softening in your breath, the release of weight you were never meant to carry alone. Whisper to yourself, I no longer force. I listen. I wait. I align. And in that release, imagine the tide shifting, the current turning, the sea itself guiding you toward the fullness you once chased in vain. This is the path of inspired action. To let go of frantic labor, to attune to the field, to act only when guided. In doing so, your nets no longer tear, your strength no longer depletes, and your boat fills not with the scraps of desperation but with the harvest of alignment. The fisherman who laid down his net teaches us the wisdom of surrender and the abundance of trust. Let his story echo in your heart whenever you feel the urge to force. Remember, the sea does not reward strain, it rewards harmony. When we step from the parable of the fisherman into the reflection of our own lives, the contrast between inspired action and forced action becomes unmistakably clear. Forced action carries a certain heaviness in its bones. It is the restless compulsion to move, even when there is no guidance. The belief that exhaustion equals progress. The conviction that if we stop pushing, everything will collapse. It is the endless to-do list born of fear rather than vision. The treadmill that never allows rest, because the driver behind it is lack, scarcity, and distrust. Inspired action, by contrast, feels different at its very root. It does not come from panic or pressure, but from a quiet nudge, a gentle inner stirring that says, this step now. It can still stretch you, it can still demand courage, but it carries a hum, a resonance, a flow that lets you know you are not moving alone. Think of the times in your life when you have forced yourself down a path you were not aligned with. Perhaps a job you kept out of fear of instability, a relationship you clung to out of fear of loneliness, a project you dragged forward, even though your spirit whispered no. How did it feel? Heavy, draining, resistant, as though every movement required 10 times the effort. And now recall the moments when you acted in inspiration, when you called someone out of nowhere, only to discover they had been thinking of you. When you followed an impulse to visit a place and found an opportunity waiting. When you said yes to something that terrified you but felt alive in your chest. Those moments carried a different energy, expansive, light, magnetic. You were not rowing against the current, you were lifted by it. The difference between inspired and forced action is not in appearance. They may look identical to an observer. Both may involve effort, courage, visible movement. The difference lies in the frequency behind them. Forced action hums with desperation, with the fear of what if I don't. Inspired action hums with trust, with a knowing of this is the step now. Forced action is driven by the mind's demand for control. Inspired action is guided by the soul's alignment with the field. This distinction matters because the universe responds not to appearances but to vibration. You can labor endlessly under forced action and still find yourself blocked, depleted, delayed. Or you can take one inspired step, small, simple, and watch as doors open, paths align, synchronicities multiply. The fisherman who strained for hours and returned with empty nets teaches us that more effort is not more abundance. The fisherman who waited and listened teaches us that aligned effort is abundance. Here is your practice. Each morning, before rushing into your day, pause and ask yourself one question. What is the lightest, most aligned step I can take today? Do not demand the entire plan. Do not insist on certainty. Simply ask for the next step. Trust the answer that arises not in the form of thunderous command, but in the quiet whisper of intuition. Then take that step, no matter how small. That is inspired action. And remember, inspired action is not lazy, it is not avoidance. It is precision. It is the difference between a blade swung wildly and a blade that cuts cleanly with one stroke. It is efficiency born of trust, movement born of resonance, progress born of harmony with the field. Learn this rhythm, and you will find that the path bends toward you, that your effort is multiplied, that the very currents of life move with you. Forced action drains, inspired action sustains. And the more you practice this discernment, the more you will live not as one straining against life, but as one carried by it. If inspired action is the difference between rowing with strain and raising the sail into the wind, then the art of listening for nudges is how we learn when to set the sail, which direction to face, and how to recognize the breeze that is meant for us. Life is always whispering. The universe does not only speak in thunderclaps or lightning strikes, it speaks in the small, almost imperceptible currents that ripple across the surface of your awareness. These nudges are subtle, a thought that arises out of nowhere, a gentle tug in the chest when you think of a possibility, a sudden curiosity about a path you had not considered, a name that keeps returning to your mind until you finally reach out. To the untrained ear, they are dismissed as coincidence, as random impulses. But to the one attuned, they are guidance clear, persistent, and profoundly trustworthy. The tragedy of our age is not that guidance is absent, but that we have drowned it beneath noise. Constant stimulation, endless scrolling, frantic schedules, all of it keeps us so filled with static that the soft nudge of intuition is lost in the storm. Listening for nudges requires a willingness to create silence, to carve out spaces in which the whisper can be heard. It is like listening for the sound of a feather landing. You must still the wind, quiet the room, calm the body, open the heart. Only then do you notice what was always there. Think back to a moment when you followed such a nudge, even if it made no logical sense. Perhaps you took a different route home and stumbled upon exactly the person or place you needed. Perhaps you delayed something for no reason, only to avoid a problem you could not have foreseen. Perhaps you felt called to pick up a book, watch a certain video, or write down a sentence, and in doing so you received precisely the clarity you sought. That was not randomness, it was responsiveness. It was the field speaking in the language of subtlety. The more you honor it, the louder it becomes. The practice is simple yet radical. Ask each morning, what does my intuition nudge me toward today? Do not demand an entire blueprint. Listen only for the smallest step. Sometimes it will be practical, send that message, tidy that space, finish that task. Sometimes it will be seemingly irrelevant, take a walk, rest, call a friend, listen to music. Do not dismiss it, for you do not see the web being woven. What feels irrelevant to you may be the exact thread that ties the larger tapestry together. Trust the whisper, even when it contradicts your logic, for intuition is the voice of alignment, not of fear. To embody this practice, close your eyes now and breathe slowly. Ask silently, what is one small step I can take today that aligns me with what I seek? Do not strain for an answer. Let it arrive like a feather on water. Perhaps it is a word, an image, a person, an act. When it comes, write it down and commit to honoring it. That is how you build trust with the field, not by demanding certainty, but by responding to whispers. Each time you do, the nudges grow clearer, the whispers grow louder, and soon you live not by guesswork but by guidance. Listening for nudges is the skill that transforms manifestation from theory into dialogue. It is the way you shift from talking at the universe to talking with it. And when you begin to honor the whispers, you will find yourself guided step by step along paths you could never have plotted, carried into synchronicities too precise to be dismissed, led into lives that feel not like accidents but like orchestrations. The nudge is the universe reaching out its hand. Your choice is whether you will notice, trust, and follow. The whisper of intuition may arrive softly, almost like a breeze brushing across your cheek, but to follow it requires courage. Not the kind of courage that slays dragons or marches onto battlefields, but the quieter, more enduring courage that says yes to a step that feels uncertain, yes to a nudge that carries no guarantee, yes to moving forward without knowing the whole path. We often believe courage must be grand, dramatic, visible to the world. But in truth, the courage that transforms lives is made of small steps taken consistently in trust. It is the phone call you finally make, the truth you finally speak, the habit you finally release, the letter you finally send. These are not monumental in the eyes of the world, yet they alter the entire frequency of your life because they shift your vibration from hesitation to alignment. Think of a lantern lighting the way through a dark forest. You do not see the entire path illuminated, only the next few feet. But as you walk those steps, the lantern moves with you, revealing more. That is how small steps work. You do not need to see the whole journey to trust the step in front of you. And often, the courage to take one small step creates momentum that carries you further than you ever imagined. One action taken in alignment sends ripples through the field, setting in motion opportunities, synchronicities, and outcomes that no amount of overthinking could have engineered. Fear will tell you that the step is too small to matter, that it must be bigger, bolder, more certain. But fear misunderstands how energy works. The universe does not measure your steps in size, it measures them in frequency. A small step taken in courage resonates more powerfully than a grand gesture taken in fear. Sending one message with trust is more magnetic than launching a massive effort in desperation. Choosing one aligned act today is more potent than postponing for years while waiting for certainty. The field responds not to volume but to vibration, not to scale but to sincerity. Here is your practice. Identify one small step you have been avoiding, not because it is impossible, but because it carries the weight of vulnerability. Perhaps it is sharing an idea, beginning a project, admitting your desire, reaching out for support. Write it down. Then breathe into the space of your chest, letting gratitude replace fear, and whisper, I choose courage in this small step. Take the step, no matter how insignificant it seems. The moment you do, notice the shift in your energy, the release of tension, the quiet sense of rightness. That is the reward of courage, not only the outcome it eventually brings, but the alignment it creates in the present moment. Remember, manifestation is not a single leap, but a series of small, courageous steps, each one moving you closer to resonance with your desire. The great journeys are not accomplished by sudden leaps into certainty, but by 1,000 quiet yeses to the whispers of intuition. And with each yes, the path unfolds, the lantern shines further, and your courage deepens not as a forced performance but as a natural expression of trust. This is the kind of courage that reshapes reality, not in bursts of drama, but in steady alignment with the field. Walk this way, and you will discover that the life you once dreamed of was built not by giant leaps, but by the courage of small steps, honored one by one. It is one thing to practice intention, belief, detachment, and inspired action in moments of ritual when the candle is lit, when the journal is open, when the meditation cushion steadies you. But the true test, the true integration, is whether these principles follow you into the ordinary rhythms of daily life, whether they infuse the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you respond to the simplest interactions. Alignment is not meant to be locked away in sacred spaces alone. It is meant to spill into the marketplace, the kitchen, the workplace, the sidewalk, until every step is a reflection of coherence. Imagine for a moment slipping into the shoes of the version of yourself who already lives the reality you seek. Feel the ground beneath those soles. How does this version of you breathe while waiting in line at the store? How does this version of you respond when someone interrupts or disagrees? How does this version of you carry themselves in silence, in small talk, in the hidden corners of the day? Alignment is not only about big moments of decision, it is about the thousands of micro moments that broadcast your frequency into the field. The universe does not tune only to what you do during ritual. It listens always, responding to the dominant tone of your daily life. When you wake in the morning, do you rise with dread, rushing immediately into static, or do you take 3 conscious breaths, placing your feet on the floor as though stepping into sacred ground? When you eat, do you consume in distraction, or do you allow even a sip of water to become an act of gratitude? When you encounter setbacks, do you spiral into fear, or do you pause, breathe, and remember that delay does not mean denial? Each of these choices is small, almost invisible, but together they create the tapestry of your frequency. Alignment is less about grand declarations and more about the quiet consistency of your state. The practice here is embodiment. Choose one desire you are manifesting and ask yourself, if it were already real, how would I live today? How would I walk, breathe, speak, decide? Then begin to embody that state, not as a performance, but as a natural rehearsal for what is already becoming. If abundance is your desire, spend today noticing and celebrating every form of abundance already around you. The sunlight through your window, the laughter of a child, the ease of breath. If love is your desire, speak and act with the gentleness, openness, and warmth you imagine receiving. If peace is your desire, let your choices reflect that peace, even in traffic, even in conversation, even in solitude. This is alignment in daily life. To live as though what you ask for is already present. To let your frequency be shaped by the reality you are becoming rather than the one you are leaving. Over time, this consistency turns practice into natural state, effort into ease. You no longer need to remind yourself constantly, you simply become the vibration you once sought to rehearse. And when that happens, manifestation is no longer something you are trying to achieve. It is simply the inevitable reflection of the life you are already living. So carry alignment with you not as a task but as a rhythm, not as a checklist but as a way of being. Let your mornings, your meals, your conversations, your quiet moments all become expressions of coherence. In this way, you transform daily life into sacred practice, and sacred practice into daily life. The two merge, and your entire existence becomes a continuous signal, a living broadcast of trust, gratitude, and readiness. Now, before we cross into the deeper territories of receptivity, let us pause and gather the threads of what has been woven so far, for the mind hungers for coherence and the soul thrives on remembrance. We began by planting seeds with clear intention, ensuring that our desires were not vague wishes but blueprints carved in the architecture of vibration. We tuned the transmitter of belief, knowing that what we accept as true becomes the lens through which all reality is filtered. We spoke to the field with clarity, blessing our requests with detachment, learning to release the grip of control and trust the timing that transcends our calendars. We trained our hearts to wait in the sacred pause, to resist the urge to dig at the soil in doubt, to honor the unseen work that always precedes the visible. We opened ourselves to inspired action, learning to distinguish between force and flow, to listen for the subtle nudges that guide us, to walk with courage even in the smallest steps, and to embody alignment not only in ritual but in the ordinary breath of daily life. Each of these lessons forms a constellation in the sky of your journey. Look back now and see how the stars connect. Intention shining as the northern point, belief as the guiding axis, asking with clarity as the first beam of light, trust as the bridge, inspired action as the steady path beneath your feet. Together they form a map, a compass, a rhythm by which you may travel not as a wanderer lost in the noise, but as one who knows the song of the field and walks in harmony with its pulse. And as you remember these lessons, do not hold them only in the mind, anchor them in the body, for the body is the altar where spirit meets earth. So breathe with me now. Inhale slowly, filling your lungs as though drawing in the warmth of the lessons themselves, the wisdom of every step we have taken. Hold for a moment, letting it settle, letting it saturate every cell. And as you exhale, release the static, the doubts, the impatience, the urgency that might still cling. Again, inhale the signal, exhale the static. With each cycle of breath, imagine the compass within your chest glowing brighter, aligning itself with the north of trust, the east of clarity, the south of courage, the west of gratitude. Feel how this breath practice transforms your state. It is not merely oxygen you are taking in, it is coherence. It is the integration of all we have spoken, the embodiment of the teachings in your very rhythm. Each breath declares, I receive, I release, I align. Repeat these words softly as you breathe, letting them become mantras that live in you beyond this moment. For when the breath remembers, the mind follows, the heart steadies, the body softens, and the soul shines through. This is the gift of pause, the purpose of recap, not to repeat for the sake of repetition, but to weave lessons into the very fabric of your being. As we stand at this point in the journey, anchored in breath, let us step forward with renewed clarity, ready to enter the next phase, the art of receiving, the sacred openness that transforms asking into fulfillment. For it is one thing to plant, another to trust, another to act, but it is yet another to open wide enough to let the harvest flow in without resistance. And that, beloved listener, is where we are headed. Once, in a quiet village by the mountains, there lived a little girl who wandered the fields each day collecting stones. Some were smooth and round, some jagged and rough, some glittered faintly in the sun, Others were dull and heavy. She loved them all, for each seemed like a treasure to her. And so she carried them in her small hands, gathering more and more until her palms ached and her fingers cramped around the weight. Her mother would often ask her why she clung so tightly, why she did not set them down, and the child would reply, "Because what if I lose them? What if no more stones come? These are mine, and I must keep them." One morning, while the child played near a stream, an old traveler approached. He carried with him a pouch of shining gems, radiant and rare, brighter than anything she had ever seen. He knelt down and offered one to her. But when she reached out, her hands could not receive it, for her fingers were clenched tightly around the stones she had gathered. The traveler smiled kindly and said, "You cannot take this gift until you let go of what you hold. The stream is full of stones, endless in supply, but these gems arrive only when your hands are open." The child tried to stretch her fingers, but fear gripped her heart, whispering that if she let go, she would be left with nothing. And so she stood frozen, unable to release what she had and unable to receive what was offered. Only later, when her hands ached so badly she could no longer bear the pain, did she finally loosen her grip. The stones tumbled into the water with a splash, and in that empty moment, her palms opened wide. The traveler placed the gem in her hand, and she felt the weight shift, not heavier, but lighter, as though its brilliance carried her instead of burdened her. For the first time she understood. The closed hand is safe but empty. The open hand is vulnerable but full. And from that day on, she carried less, clung less, and found that the stream always offered more than she ever needed. We are that child more often than we realize. We cling to old habits, outdated beliefs, relationships that no longer nourish us, fears that masquerade as protection, and desires that were never truly ours. We hold them tightly because we fear that if we let go, nothing will come to replace them. And so we block the very blessings we have been asking for, our hands too full of what is past to receive what is arriving. The universe, like the traveler, waits patiently, gems in hand, whispering, "Loosen your grip, open your palm, trust the stream." But until we do, we remain like the child, aching, longing, unable to receive. The practice here is simple yet profound. Unclench. Find one place where you are gripping life with fear, the outcome you demand, the security you won't release, the memory you replay again and again, and soften your hold. Whisper, "I trust. I open. I receive." Let the stones of yesterday fall into the stream. Feel the ache in your hands dissolve into relief. Then hold them open, not in begging, not in desperation, but in readiness. For the field cannot fill what is already clenched, but it pours itself gladly into what is open. This parable teaches us that receiving is not a matter of asking harder or wishing louder, it is a matter of opening wider. The child who learned to loosen her grip found that the stream never stopped offering, that the gems always arrived in perfect time, that the ache of holding was replaced by the joy of receiving. May you remember her lesson whenever you find yourself clinging. The open hand is the hand that receives. To understand receiving is to understand an entirely different mode of being than the one we have been trained to live in. Most of us are conditioned to strive, to pursue, to chase, to accumulate, to grasp, to measure our worth by how much we can produce and how tirelessly we can push. This is the energy of doing, of efforting, of endless activity. Yet manifestation does not respond only to output, it requires input, receptivity, a willingness to soften, to allow, to become open space into which blessings can flow. The energy of receiving is not about sitting idly in passivity. It is about entering a posture of openness that is magnetic rather than frantic, a posture that says, "I am ready, I am worthy, I am available." Receiving is more subtle than asking. Asking is the declaration, the sending forth of signal. Receiving is the stillness that allows the echo to return and settle. Imagine pouring water into a vessel. If the vessel is upright, empty, clean, the water fills it naturally. But if the vessel is tipped, clogged, or already full, no amount of pouring will make it hold what is given. In the same way, you may ask clearly, believe deeply, trust sincerely, act courageously, and yet if you are not in the energy of receptivity, what you ask for cannot rest in your life. The flow is not stopped because it is unwilling, but because it has no place to land. The energy of receiving feels like exhaling after a long inhale, like leaning back into a chair after standing too long, like lying down on the earth and remembering that gravity holds you. It is not tense, it is not clenched, it is not suspicious. It is soft, expansive, welcoming. And when you step into this energy, you discover something profound. Receiving is not passive. It is an active participation in the rhythm of the universe. Just as the inhale requires the exhale, just as the giving requires the acceptance, just as the sending requires the returning, so too manifestation requires both the asking and the receiving. Consider how much of your life you have spent resisting gifts because of doubt, fear, or feelings of unworthiness. How often have you dismissed compliments, deflected offers of help, rejected opportunities because you believed you didn't deserve them, or assumed they came with hidden strings? Each time you closed the vessel, tipped it sideways, blocked the flow. Receiving asks you to do something radical in its simplicity, to say yes without guilt, without suspicion, without self-sabotage, to accept with grace what arrives, knowing it is the response to your vibration, not an accident, not a trap. Practice this now. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and imagine the universe offering you exactly what you have asked for, not in some distant future, but here, now, in your open hands. Imagine yourself saying yes, fully, without resistance. Feel the warmth in your chest, the expansion in your breath, the quiet joy of being met. Whisper softly, I receive, I allow, I welcome. Let those words echo through your body like a tuning fork. The energy of receiving is the energy of alignment completed. Without it, the circuit remains open, the signal ungrounded. With it, the current closes, the manifestation crystallizes. The blessing enters your life not as a distant possibility, but as a lived reality. To receive is to embody the truth that you are worthy, that you are whole, that you are capable of holding what you once only dreamed. It is not weakness to receive. It is wisdom. It is not indulgence. It is balance. It is not selfishness. It is the final act of co-creation. For only when you receive fully can you live fully, and only when you live fully can you give abundantly again. Though the act of receiving seems as natural as breathing, many discover that it is often the hardest part of the manifestation journey. We ask with clarity, we visualize with devotion, we practice trust, and yet when the gift finally begins to appear, something within us freezes, hesitates, or even rejects it outright. Why does this happen? The roots of resistance to receiving are deep, tangled in old wounds, cultural conditioning, and the quiet shadows of unworthiness that dwell in the subconscious. We live in societies that glorify giving, serving, producing, and self-sacrifice, but which often cast suspicion on receiving. To receive is seen as indulgent, greedy, or selfish. And so, even as we dream of abundance, we feel guilty when it arrives, as if we are stealing from some invisible reserve rather than opening to the infinite flow of life. At the heart of this resistance lies unworthiness. Somewhere along the way, many of us absorb the message that we are not enough, not good enough, not strong enough, not deserving enough. This belief becomes a filter through which all blessings are measured, and when opportunities knock, we instinctively step back, convinced they cannot be meant for us. We may even sabotage them, unconsciously creating obstacles so that we never have to face the discomfort of holding what we once claimed to desire. Receiving demands that we confront the lie of unworthiness, that we stand in the light of enoughness and allow ourselves to be seen as worthy vessels. Without this, no matter how loudly we ask, we will quietly refuse what comes. Another reason we resist receiving is attachment to control. To accept a gift, a blessing, or an opportunity often means stepping into vulnerability, acknowledging that we are not the sole authors of our lives, that life itself moves through us with a wisdom greater than our own. Control clings tightly, insisting on dictating the form and timing of what arrives. But receiving requires openness to surprise, flexibility, a surrender of control. For some, this is terrifying, for it exposes the illusion that we are entirely self-sufficient. Yet the paradox is that true power lies not in rigid control but in graceful cooperation with the flow of life. There is also fear of change. Every blessing reshapes us. To receive abundance means to step into new responsibility. To receive love means to open to intimacy and vulnerability. To receive purpose means to release old distractions. Change unsettles the ego, which prefers the familiarity of lack to the unknown of fulfillment. And so, even when we long for what we ask, we resist its arrival because we are afraid of who we must become to hold it. The universe, patient and kind, never forces us, but waits for us to soften, to open, to declare with our whole being, I am ready. The practice here is awareness and honesty. Ask yourself, where am I resisting receiving? Do I dismiss compliments instead of accepting them with gratitude? Do I hesitate to say yes to opportunities that align with my desires? Do I find myself sabotaging progress because part of me still believes I am undeserving? Write these answers gently, without judgment, as though you are uncovering stones in a stream. Then counter each with a new truth. I am worthy of being seen. I am safe to open. I am ready to receive. Whisper these words daily. Let them echo until they begin to dissolve the old patterns. For the truth is simple and liberating. The universe does not send blessings only to a chosen few. It responds to vibration. And if you are aligned, then what comes is yours by right of resonance. To resist is to delay, but to receive is to fulfill the very dialogue you began when you first set your intention. Let go of guilt, unworthiness, control, and fear of change. Open your hands, open your heart, and remember, to receive is not selfish, it is sacred. It is the natural completion of the cycle, the moment when prayer becomes presence, when desire becomes reality. If receiving is the open hand, then gratitude is the warmth that fills it, the current that completes the circuit, the vibration that turns a moment of blessing into a state of abundance. Gratitude is not merely the polite acknowledgement of what has been given. It is a frequency, a resonance, a magnetic field that draws more of what is aligned into your life. When you practice gratitude sincerely, not as performance but as a felt state, you are declaring to the universe, I see what you have given me, I honor it, I am expanded by it, and I am ready for more. This readiness does not come from greed but from alignment, for the universe flows most easily where it is most welcomed. Think of gratitude as a mirror that reflects back to the field its own generosity. When you notice even the smallest blessing, the cup of water in your hand, the breath in your lungs, the sunlight streaming through your window, you are signaling that you are attuned, that you recognize abundance not only in its grand forms but in its subtle expressions. This recognition amplifies the vibration of abundance in your life, just as noticing static amplifies noise. The more you give thanks, the more you notice reasons to give thanks, and the cycle builds upon itself until your frequency hums with sufficiency, joy, and openness. Without gratitude, receiving remains incomplete. Imagine being given a gift and leaving it unopened, or opening it and then setting it aside without acknowledgement. The gesture is lost, the energy unanchored. Gratitude anchors manifestation into your reality. It is the act that tells the universe, yes, I received this. Yes, it matters. Yes, I hold it in reverence. And the universe, like any generous giver, delights in this acknowledgement and responds by giving more. There is also a subtle power in giving thanks before the blessing arrives. When you express gratitude in advance, you are collapsing the distance between desire and fulfillment. You are stepping into the state of already having, embodying the vibration of completion before the form appears. This is not delusion, it is alignment. The subconscious does not distinguish between vividly felt gratitude for what exists and vividly felt gratitude for what is becoming. Both create the same frequency, both signal readiness, both invite more. The practice here is both simple and transformative. Begin each day by naming 3 things you are grateful for. One that you already hold, one that you once longed for and now have, and one that has not yet arrived but is already on its way. Speak them aloud if you can, feeling the resonance in your body as you say the words. Let the gratitude rise, not only as thought but as emotion, as warmth in your chest, as expansion in your breath. Over time, this practice will not only shift your state, but recalibrate your entire vibration. Gratitude is the gateway because it shifts you from focusing on absence to celebrating presence, from longing to fulfillment, from scarcity to abundance. It is the bridge that turns receiving into multiplying, that turns a single blessing into an entire flow. And so, when you practice gratitude, you are not simply being polite, you are tuning your frequency to abundance itself. Whisper now, with sincerity, thank you for what I have, thank you for what I hold, thank you for what is coming. Let those words linger like a song within you, for in that song lies the secret of endless receiving, the gateway through which more and more may enter. Gratitude opens the gateway, but celebration secures the passage, anchoring what has arrived so that it does not slip unnoticed into the background of your life. Too often, we move so quickly from one manifestation to the next that we forget to honor the miracle of what has already come. We asked, we trusted, we acted, we received, and then, without pausing, we chased the next horizon. In doing so, we miss the sacred moment of integration, the moment when what was once only an idea in the unseen becomes part of our lived reality. Celebration is that moment. It is the act of pausing, recognizing, rejoicing, and saying, "This is here, this is real, this is mine." It is the ritual that transforms fleeting arrival into permanent alignment. Celebration does not require grandeur. It does not demand fireworks or feasts, though it may invite them if your spirit longs for such expression. Celebration is first and foremost a vibration, an acknowledgement that life has met you, that your frequency has drawn something beautiful into being. It can be as simple as lighting a candle, as quiet as a whispered prayer, as gentle as a walk in nature with gratitude in your heart. What matters is the intentional pause, the embodied joy, the willingness to declare, "This mattered, I honor it." Think of how you feel when a friend gives you a gift and you see their eyes light up as you open it with delight. Their joy deepens because your joy anchors their offering. In the same way, the universe delights when you celebrate what it has delivered, when you do not dismiss it as too small, too late, or not enough, but instead treat it as sacred evidence that the dialogue is real, the conversation alive, the relationship reciprocal. Celebration feeds the flow, assuring the field that its signals are received, its gifts treasured, its abundance welcomed. Celebration also rewires the subconscious. When you rejoice in what has arrived, your mind begins to associate manifestation with pleasure rather than tension, with joy rather than suspicion. This strengthens belief, stabilizes trust, and accelerates future alignment. Each celebration is like placing a flag in the soil of your journey, marking the ground as sacred, reminding yourself, "I asked, I trusted, I received." Over time, these markers accumulate, and you look back to see a path lined with proof, a landscape of evidence that your co-creation is not fantasy but fact. Here is your practice. The next time you notice a manifestation, whether it is large, like a long-awaited opportunity, or small, like a synchronistic encounter, celebrate it. Speak it aloud. "This is evidence. This is alignment. This is the universe responding to me." Write it down in a journal of celebrations, a living archive of your dialogue with the field. Share it with a trusted friend, not in boast but in wonder, as a way of anchoring it deeper. Allow your body to join in the celebration, smile, dance, breathe with joy. Let yourself feel the fullness of arrival. For celebration is not vanity, it is reverence. It is not indulgence, it is integration. It is the act of saying yes so deeply that what has arrived becomes part of your identity, part of your vibration, part of your ongoing dialogue with reality. The child who receives a gift and hugs it tightly ensures it will not be forgotten. You too must embrace your manifestations with celebration so that they do not vanish into the fog of forgetfulness. Whisper now, "I honor what has arrived. I rejoice in what is here. I celebrate the dialogue alive in my life." And with that celebration, you anchor abundance into your being, making space for more to follow. We have walked the arc from gratitude into celebration, and now we pause once again to gather the strands, weaving them into a living fabric that you can carry with you beyond these words. You have learned that gratitude is not simply a polite habit, but a vibrational gateway that tunes your heart to abundance, amplifying what you notice and multiplying what you welcome. You have seen how celebration takes that gratitude further, transforming each manifestation into an anchored reality, ensuring that what was once ephemeral becomes integrated into your identity. Together, gratitude and celebration are the twin pillars of receptivity. One opens the gate, the other secures the foundation. Yet the journey of receiving does not end here. It requires a continual posture of openness, a willingness to remain unguarded, unclenched, and available to life. Openness is not a single act but a way of being, a rhythm of trust that flows through each breath, each thought, each choice. It is the difference between moving through the world with closed shutters and walking with windows wide, letting the light and air pour in. To be open is to admit that you do not need to know how or when. It is to allow life to surprise you, to bring blessings in forms you did not predict, to let the field choose the timing and the vessel while you remain ready to welcome. Openness is the antidote to rigidity. It is the soft space where miracles find landing, the clear water where reflection becomes possible, the fertile soil where seeds sprout in their season. Without it, even gratitude and celebration can harden into rituals of control. Thank you, but only if it looks like this. I celebrate, but only if it arrives on time. True openness says, I am grateful for what is, I celebrate what arrives, and I am open to whatever form abundance takes next. This is the heart of co-creation, not dictating but dancing, not commanding but collaborating. The practice here is to declare your openness daily. Upon waking, before the static of the world intrudes, place your hand upon your chest and whisper, I am open to receiving my highest good in ways beyond my imagination. I trust the timing, I trust the form. I trust the flow. Feel the resonance of those words ripple through your being, dissolving resistance, softening control, expanding space. Carry that openness into your interactions, your choices, your moments of silence. Notice where you close, where you tighten, where you resist, and gently remind yourself to open again. As you breathe into this openness now, let it feel like standing before a wide horizon, arms stretched, palms lifted, heart unshielded. Let it feel like the stillness before dawn when the whole sky seems to whisper possibility. Let it feel like the first deep breath after holding your lungs tight too long. That is openness, and in that state, life flows to you not as a trickle but as a river. And so, with gratitude anchoring your heart, celebration securing your manifestations, and openness expanding your readiness, you step further into alignment with reality as it truly is abundant, generous, responsive. You are no longer only asking or only acting. You are receiving, you are allowing, you are becoming. This is the art of living as a co-creator, not gripping, not grasping, but opening wide enough to let the infinite pour through you. Whisper once more, with sincerity, I am open, I am ready, I receive. No path of manifestation is without its storms, and to pretend otherwise would be to tell you only half the truth. Even as you practice intention, belief, trust, inspired action, gratitude, and openness, you will encounter moments that feel like the sky closing in, like the tide receding, like the doors of opportunity suddenly shutting when you thought you had found your way through. These moments are setbacks, delays, detours, disruptions, and they are not proof that the universe has abandoned you. They are, instead, part of the rhythm, the necessary counterpoint to progress, the hidden shaping that deepens your alignment and strengthens your readiness. The ego sees setbacks as failure, as punishment, as evidence that the dream is slipping away, but the soul knows better. The soul sees setbacks as mirrors, as teachers, as slingshots pulling you backward only to launch you forward with greater precision and force. The path of manifestation is not linear, it spirals. You revisit lessons, sometimes in subtler ways, sometimes in sharper ways, not because you are failing, but because you are refining. Each setback is a chance to test the strength of your belief, the resilience of your trust, the depth of your openness. It is the forge where your vibration is tempered, made steadier, more consistent, more magnetic. Think of the farmer whose crops wither in one season. To the impatient mind, the harvest is lost, the labor wasted. But the wise farmer knows that the soil itself is being asked to rest, to regenerate, to build strength unseen. The next season, when the rains return, the harvest will be richer, more abundant, because the land has been prepared by what seemed like loss. Your setbacks are the same. They are the soil renewing, the roots stretching deeper, the unseen preparation for a manifestation that requires sturdier ground. The practice here is reframing. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this teaching me? What strength, clarity, or resilience is being born in me through this detour? Write your answers with honesty, without rushing to positive spin, but with curiosity. You may find that what felt like loss is actually protection. What seemed like delay is actually timing. What appeared as rejection is actually redirection. Over time, you will notice that the very setbacks you once cursed were the turning points that delivered you to places greater than you could have scripted. To live as a manifester is not to avoid setbacks, but to alchemize them. It is to stand in the storm and whisper, even here, the universe is for me. Even here, the dialogue continues. Even here, I am not abandoned but guided. This is not naive optimism, it is vibrational mastery. It is the choice to see beyond appearances, to trust the unseen, to know that the path bends not away from you but toward you in ways that only time will reveal. So the next time a door closes, a plan unravels, a dream delays, remember this truth. The universe is not punishing you, it is preparing you. The nature of setbacks is not denial but refinement. And when you see them this way, they lose their sting, becoming not barriers but bridges, not failures but initiations. You are not off path, you are being shaped for the path itself. Of all the setbacks we encounter on the path of manifestation, perhaps none test the heart more deeply than delay. When you have asked with clarity, aligned your belief, trusted with patience, acted with inspiration, opened with readiness, and yet the thing you seek has not yet arrived, doubt creeps in like a slow mist. The mind whispers, maybe it isn't working, maybe I did it wrong, maybe it will never come. Delay stretches time like an unending corridor, and in that stretch, fear prowls. But delay is not denial, it is preparation, gestation, alignment unfolding behind the veil. Think of a seed buried in soil. For days, weeks, perhaps months, nothing visible emerges. To the impatient observer, it might seem as if the seed is lifeless, inert, wasted. But beneath the soil, roots are weaving, anchoring, drinking in hidden waters, preparing for the moment when sprouting becomes inevitable. If you were to dig at the soil each day, desperate for proof, you would not only fail to hasten the process, you would harm it, disrupt it, uproot it before it was ready. Manifestation follows the same rhythm. Delays are not empty, they are root work. They are the unseen weaving of circumstances, connections, and readiness, aligning your desire not just with possibility but with sustainability. The danger of delay is that it tempts us to abandon the field entirely, to declare the process broken, to return to old patterns of force and fear. Yet those who endure through delay discover something sacred, that waiting is not passive but transformative. Waiting stretches belief into conviction, stretches trust into surrender, stretches desire into maturity. When what you seek finally arrives, you hold it not as a fragile hope but as a natural extension of who you have become in the waiting. Delay ensures that you do not merely receive, but that you are ready to carry, nurture, and embody what you ask for. Here is your practice. Choose one area of your life where you feel caught in delay. Write honestly how it feels: frustration, fear, impatience, sadness. Then beneath those words, write a new perspective. This delay is preparing me. This delay is rooting me. This delay is aligning what I cannot yet see. Each time impatience arises, return to these words as anchors, as reminders that unseen soil is never silent but always active. The truth is, delay is one of the greatest gifts of manifestation, for it teaches you to trust not the clock but the rhythm, not the calendar but the field, not the appearance of absence but the presence of preparation. The seed does not sprout on your timeline but on its own, and when it does, you will find the wait was not wasted but woven into the very strength of the harvest. Whisper now, delay is not denial. Delay is my preparation. Delay is the unseen weaving of my blessing. Let these words soften the ache, steady the breath, and remind you that the corridor you walk is not endless but opening, step by step, into the arrival already on its way. There are times when the delay is not in the world outside but in the storm within, when the challenge is not that the universe has withheld but that your own emotions pull you away from alignment. Emotional setbacks can feel like sudden waves crashing over the calm surface you work so carefully to cultivate. You may wake up one morning with heaviness in your chest, doubts echoing in your mind, or a sense of weariness that makes your practices feel hollow. At such times, it is easy to think that you have failed, that you have undone all your progress, that the universe has turned away from you. But this, too, is part of the path. Emotional turbulence is not a sign that you are off course. It is a natural cycle of the human spirit, a tide that rises and falls, a rhythm that deepens you if you do not resist it. The ego sees emotional dips as regression, but the soul sees them as purification. Just as the ocean must churn to release debris, just as storms clear the sky of stagnation, so too must your emotions surface old fears, hidden griefs, and lingering doubts so they can be released. When heaviness arises, it is not proof that you are broken, it is evidence that you are clearing space. Your vibration does not collapse because you feel sadness or fear. It collapses only when you judge yourself for feeling them, when you resist them, when you bury them. To allow the emotion, to breathe with it, to sit in it with compassion, is to transform the setback into an opening. Emotional setbacks also serve as mirrors, revealing the beliefs that still live in the shadows. When you feel despair, ask, what belief is fueling this feeling? What story am I still carrying that no longer serves me? In this way, emotions become guides rather than enemies, showing you precisely where your vibration needs gentleness, care, and recalibration. If belief is the transmitter, then emotion is the amplifier. Setbacks in emotions simply mean that the amplifier has tuned into an old frequency for a moment. You are not powerless, you can retune, not by force, but by awareness, compassion, and gentle practice. The practice here is simple but profound. When an emotional setback arises, pause and name it aloud. This is fear. This is grief. This is doubt. This is weariness. By naming it, you separate it from your identity. You are not the fear, you are the one witnessing it. Then breathe with it, letting each inhale draw in compassion and each exhale release resistance. After a few cycles, speak a gentle reframe. Even in this feeling, I am safe. Even in this feeling, I am aligned. Even in this feeling, the universe has not left me. These words are not to suppress emotion but to remind you of truth, to anchor you while the wave passes. Emotional setbacks do not erase your progress. They deepen it. They teach you resilience, compassion, and humility. They ensure that your vibration is not brittle but flexible, not fragile but enduring. They remind you that you are not a machine meant to output perfect frequency at all times, but a soul living a human life, capable of ebb and flow, capable of breaking and mending, capable of falling and rising again. Whisper now, with gentleness toward yourself, my emotions may shift, but my alignment remains. I am safe to feel. I am safe to heal. I am safe to continue. And in that whisper, the storm softens, the wave subsides, and you remember that emotional setbacks are not failures but initiations into deeper strength. Beyond the delays that test your patience and the emotions that stir your inner tides, there are also the external challenges, those moments when life itself seems to rise against you with circumstances beyond your control. A job is lost, a relationship ends, a financial setback arrives, a health concern emerges, an opportunity slips through your fingers. These moments can feel like cruel interruptions, like the universe slamming a door just as you were learning to open windows. Yet here too lies a hidden rhythm, a deeper intelligence moving through what appears as disruption. External challenges are not punishments. They are catalysts. They are the chisels that carve your character, the storms that strip away what is weak so that only what is strong remains. To the ego, external challenges are evidence that manifestation does not work, that all your practices are meaningless in the face of life's raw power, but the soul knows otherwise. The soul understands that when a structure collapses, it is because its foundation was unsteady. When a door closes, it is because the path beyond it would not have served your highest good. When a storm rages, it is because something within you is ready to be reshaped by it. What looks like destruction is often reconfiguration. What feels like loss is often liberation. What arrives as chaos is often the necessary clearing of space for something greater to take root. Consider the forest after a fire. To the eye, the devastation is complete. Trees blackened, soil scarred, air heavy with smoke. Yet within weeks, green shoots emerge, nourished by the very ashes of what was burned. The ecosystem resets, renewal surging through the apparent ruin. So it is with your life. External challenges burn away attachments, illusions, and outdated forms. They test not to break you but to ready you, to return you to your core, to make space for manifestations that could not grow in the soil of the old. The practice here is surrender reframed as power. When external challenges arise, instead of collapsing into despair or forcing solutions from fear, pause and ask, what is this teaching me? What is being cleared? What strength is being born in me through this? Then breathe deeply and allow yourself to release the illusion of control. Take inspired actions where possible, but hold them lightly, knowing that even what seems like collapse is part of alignment. Keep a journal not only of blessings but of challenges, writing them as teachers, naming the gifts hidden inside them. Over time, you will see patterns emerge, evidence that what once looked like betrayal was actually preparation. What once felt like loss was actually protection. External challenges remind you that manifestation is not about bending reality to your every whim, but about dancing with a field that sees further, knows deeper, and loves you more fiercely than you can imagine. They remind you that your worth is not measured by unbroken success, but by resilience, by the ability to rise when you fall, to trust when you stumble, to keep walking when the path grows dark. Whisper now, even in the face of whatever challenge surrounds you, this too is part of my becoming. This too is serving me. This too will pass into blessing. And with that whisper, the sharp edge of the challenge softens, and you begin to see not only the storm but the clearing that follows. When delays stretch the heart thin, when emotions surge like waves, when external challenges shake the ground beneath your feet, it is easy to forget that you are not powerless in the storm. Alignment is not about never being shaken, it is about remembering how to return, again and again, to the center. For just as a compass always finds north no matter how many times it is spun, so too does your inner being always know how to realign when you call it back. The tools of realignment are not complicated. They are simple, timeless practices that bring you out of noise and back into coherence. The key is not in knowing them but in using them, especially when resistance whispers that you are too tired, too distracted, or too defeated to bother. The first tool is presence. When chaos surrounds you, the mind leaps into past regrets and future fears, weaving stories that amplify pain. Presence interrupts that spiral. By returning to the now, this breath, this sound, this feeling, you anchor yourself in the only place where alignment can actually exist. You cannot breathe in yesterday. You cannot exhale tomorrow. You can only breathe now, and in that now, alignment begins to return. Even a single conscious breath, felt deeply, can reset the vibration of your entire being, like striking a tuning fork that steadies the whole instrument. The second tool is gratitude. We have spoken of gratitude as a gateway, but in the midst of setback, it becomes a lifeline. When the mind insists that all is lost, gratitude gently points to what remains. The breath in your body, the sun that rose again today, the lesson that pain itself carries. Gratitude does not deny difficulty, it reframes it. It says, yes, this hurts. Yes, this challenges me. And still, there is something here to honor, something here to thank. That small act of recognition begins to shift your frequency from despair to openness, from collapse to expansion. The third tool is movement. Energy stagnates when the body stills in fear, and the vibration of despair lingers in unmoving limbs. To walk, to stretch, to dance, to breathe with intention is to shake loose the static, to let your energy flow again. You do not need grand rituals. Even a short walk beneath the sky, even a gentle sway of the body, can remind you that you are not stuck, you are moving, you are alive, you are part of the rhythm. Movement realigns body and spirit, turning inertia into flow. The fourth tool is reconnection. This may be through silence, prayer, meditation, or speaking aloud to the universe as if to a trusted friend. It may be through writing, pouring your doubts onto paper, and then responding with affirmations of truth. It may be through speaking with someone who uplifts you, who reminds you of who you are when you forget. Reconnection is about remembering that you are not alone, that the field responds, that life is interactive, that guidance is always near when you invite it. Practice now. Place one hand over your heart, inhale slowly, and exhale with a whisper. I return, I realign, I am guided. Then list 3 things, however small, for which you are grateful in this very moment. Feel your body move, even if only in the rhythm of your breath. Let your heart soften into reconnection. These are not trivial acts, they are the sacred tools by which you re-enter coherence. Setbacks may shake you, but these tools bring you back. Use them not only when the storm rages, but daily, so that when the winds rise, you are practiced in the art of returning. For realignment is not about perfection, it is about resilience. And with each return, you strengthen your faith, stabilize your vibration, and walk more steadily on the path of co-creation. Whisper once more, I always know how to return. I always find my way back. And in that whisper lies your unbreakable compass. We have journeyed together through vast terrain, from the opening promise that reality is signal, through the crafting of intention, the stabilizing of belief, the clarity of asking, the trust of surrender, the courage of action, the softness of receiving, and the resilience of staying aligned when the storms of setback arrive. Now, as we draw this path into a circle, it is time to stand still for a moment, to breathe, and to see the whole of what has unfolded, not as scattered lessons, but as one coherent map, a living dialogue between your soul and the universe. At the beginning, you were invited to see reality not as a chaotic noise, but as an intelligible field, humming with meaning, always responding to the frequency you emit. You learn that intention is the blueprint, the design etched in the unseen that directs the energy of your vibration. Belief became the transmitter, ensuring that your broadcast is steady, consistent, and strong. Asking with clarity was the sacred act of declaring your desire without desperation, releasing it like a letter mailed to the cosmos. Trust was the bridge, the patient waiting without digging at the soil, the surrender that allows timing to unfold. Inspired action was your collaboration with the flow, listening for nudges and stepping lightly yet bravely where they lead. Receiving taught you to unclench, to open, to allow abundance to land in your hands without resistance. Gratitude tuned you to abundance, celebration anchored your blessings, and openness kept you ready for more. Setbacks came, but they revealed themselves not as punishment but as preparation, shaping your resilience, testing your faith, deepening your capacity to hold what you asked for. All of these steps are not separate, they are facets of one jewel, notes of one song, stages of one dialogue. They are the rhythm of co-creation, signal sent, signal steadied, signal received, signal returned. You are not merely a seeker asking the universe for favors. You are a participant in its very unfolding, a voice within its great conversation, a frequency that shapes reality as much as reality shapes you. And so the invitation now is simple, yet profound. To live this not as a practice you visit only in moments of need, but as a way of being. To see every breath as intention, every thought as belief, every prayer as clarity, every waiting as trust, every step as action, every opening as receiving, every whisper of thanks as gratitude, every smile of joy as celebration, every softening as openness, and every challenge as a sacred teacher. This is not something you must strive for, it is something you remember, something you embody, something you allow. As we close, place your hand upon your heart once more and whisper, "Reality responds to my coherence. I am aligned, I am guided, I am whole." Let these words seal themselves in your being like a wax seal upon a letter, a final blessing that carries forward long after the sound of these words has faded. And know this, the universe is still listening, always responding. The dialogue does not end here. It continues in your breath, your choices, your dreams, your openness. Thank you for walking this path within the Lost Archive, for remembering that you are not lost at all, but found in the rhythm of a universe that loves you, guides you, and co-creates with you endlessly. May every thought you think, every desire you hold, every step you take, become part of the great conversation that reshapes reality itself. And may you never forget, once you hear this truth, nothing about reality will ever be the same again.